Hello, one and all. How we doing tonight? Good to see you. Good to see us. Good to see Soap. How we doing, Soap? Have you been busy? Digging? Yes, you've been digging all day. In fact, we've been digging, doing quite a bit of digging, digging into this, digging into that, digging around, seeing what we can find, Just a big day of digging. But digging is over now. It's stream time. So what are we going to be streaming tonight first? Well, we are going to be streaming Crooked Cappleman, telling her tale of corruption. You think she did that PowerPoint on her own? Did she? Hell, she had help. How many autopsy photos are you going to have to include in that, Cappleman? Because you can't win the case on facts, can you, Cappleman? You've got to win it on emotional manipulation, showing them pictures of what I did, showing all the jury the result of my actions. You know how we comment on Georgia Cappleman a lot in this channel, guys, and in other places, all over the internet. The story's the same. She's cool as fuck, right? Doesn't lose it, doesn't get heated. Well, all of that reputation comes crashing down in this closing argument in Charlie Adelson's murder trial from 2023. She's playing this to win, right? And it's all the way through. It's said with this disdain, this hostility, this cutthroat attitude that's fantastic all the way through. Of course, we expect no less from Georgia Cappleman. Why do you think it is that it's often Sarah Dugan that does the openings? At least in KD2 and in KD2 and Charlie. I can't remember who did the opening in I think it was Georgia in KD1. Right? We'll find that out tomorrow, guys. We'll find that out tomorrow. For now, we're going to be streaming this. Share screen. Welcome to everybody in the chat. Welcome, KLK. Members only. Good to see you. Yeah, all you guys just flicked right over from the Discord, and now you're here with us. Stop digging. We'll get back to digging tomorrow. Just digging around, digging through. Which one are we sharing? Charlie Adelson, this one. Okay. Yes, there he is. Look at him. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. This is my innocent face.
Is the state prepared to give its closing?
Oh, we need some volume on that pup.
You may proceed.
May it please the court.
Judge Everett's back in the hot seat today. Getting ready for the Leon County Courthouse egg roll eating competition. 1,500 egg rolls in 25 minutes or less. Judge Everett has a special belt that he wears to these contests, like a boxer.
State prepared to give its closing?
Yes.
Is the state prepared to give its closing?
Yes, Your Honor.
You may proceed.
May it please the court.
Have we got a Black Eagle in the house? Hey, how you doing, Black Eagle? Great to see you. And Tina Novello, fantastic. Evelyn Scott, wow, fantastic. Good to see you, Evelyn. Brian, you're always here. Fair cloth. And a fair, fine cloth it is as well. Neverly Darling, of course. Amy, of course. Jen for Justice. Welcome, Jen. Welcome back. And Cassandra Perez. Yeah, welcome, everybody. Good to see you. Oh, we're ready for some special Georgia Cappleman closing argument material. Look at this guy over here. He has no idea what he's about to witness. Why is there a 12-year-old boy with a massive head in court? How does that make sense? Is that a boy or a woman? Could be a woman. Hang on, I need to... Why does his head bigger than George's? What is going on? Okay, it is a woman, isn't it? But doesn't that look like a 12-year-old boy from here? Like in a school uniform?
In jury selection, we talked about the burden of proof and how it was my burden to prove this case to you beyond a reasonable doubt through evidence. And generally speaking, the defense's job is to poke holes in the evidence and argue that it falls short of meeting that high burden. And we also learned at jury selection that the defense does not have to prove anything. But sometimes if the law enforcement investigation is so thorough and so compelling that there's really no way to poke holes in the evidence, he has to basically admit his own words, his own text messages. That stuff is undeniable, right? And those things prove that he was in cahoots with Catherine McVanois in 2013 through the murder in 20.
How is the volume, guys? Is it too much? Too little? I mean, I don't think it's going to be too little, but is it too loud? Nope.
2014 and all the way up until her arrest in October of 2016. He knows he can't deny that he paid the killers because of this bizarre practice he had of stapling his money. So sometimes when a defendant can't attack the facts or the law, they instead try to explain it away by saying, you can't trust what you're seeing. It's not what it appears to be. It's actually something else entirely. Often, as in this case, the individual explanation, so when you zoom in on one piece of evidence with its attached explanation, can be like, maybe. But when you zoom out and you...
I think we need a finger sniffer count for Rashbaum. Does that count at the moment? Can we zoom in on there? Look at him. He's just a strange little man, isn't he? You know, there's just something amiss. There's something not quite right about this guy.
add all these things together, this explanation and this explanation.
Oh,
This
Yindra, welcome back. Good to see you.
explanation, this coincidence and this coincidence and this coincidence, it starts making less and less sense. It starts being less and less reasonable. And when you zoom out from the defense's theory, it's really unreasonable, right? Because to find it reasonable, you have to buy a lot of things that he's selling. The most obvious of which is that because Sigfredo Garcia hated him, he and Rivera traveled to Tallahassee twice to kill someone he hated in hopes that he would give them money for it on the back end. Please think about
How did Rashbaum sell that to the Adelsons? You know, Super Rashbaum. He's been retained on retainer since 2016. He knows the case inside out. Charlie Adelson gets arrested and he says, I know. We're going to admit everything, but we're going to flip it, right? And we're going to come up with this story where crazy Luis Rivera and crazy Sigfredo Garcia drove up to Tallahassee to murder Professor Markel in the hope that they would get paid. How did the Adelsons go? Yeah, okay, we'll do that. We'll put everything on the line for that. Here's $5 million, all inclusive.
that. To hit this defendant where it hurts, these two dudes with no connection at all to Dan Markel and without two nickels to rub together, rented a car and paid for gas to come to Tallahassee and stay in a hotel twice in order to kill someone that this defendant hated, to harm him. And for what? To maybe get money. Maybe he just turns him in for murder.
I love it when George is like, yeah, for what? To maybe get money? Maybe he just turns them in for murder. That would be good, wouldn't it? Go straight to the FBI. It was them.
Why not just kill and rob him if what you're after is money and there's no hired hit? Why not just kill and rob him if you're...
There really is no answer to that question, is there, guys? You know, the Latin kings want money. They don't want the full million because they're very fair Latin kings, right? They heard that Charlie was only going to pay 1/3 of a million. So that's what they're looking for. Even though to get his third, they're going to threaten the other Adelsons that we're going to pick up the other 2/3 of a million. Why not ask for the million? And why travel to Tallahassee when you could just pull a gun on Pussy Boy Charlie? You know, give us your money. Easy. It would have been easy.
Your motive is, we hate him. Then the bad guys don't even have any contact with him, according to his own story. They didn't threaten him. They did not beat him into submission. Instead, they sent his own girlfriend to extort him on their behalf. And without any actual contact from the bad guys, the defendant just opened up his safe and handed over his beloved money that he had saved his entire life since he was a child. He just handed it over. Take it all. And when that amount wasn't sufficient, these stone cold murdering gangsters let the defendant go on a payment plan to give him the rest of the money.
Just for context, guys, we're playing this video tonight because, you know, Georgia Cappleman's laying out the full story. First time she's done it with a reference to an Adelson, right? Reference to this extortion story. And we're watching this video tonight because we are what? 8 days away from jury selection. So maybe 10 days, maybe 2 weeks away from opening statements in Donna Adelson's trial, right? It's going to be a very similar case. Different, but similar. So we're just taking note about things we might see in Donna's case, things that come to mind. We'll take note as we go, but that's why we're watching this brilliant presentation today. We're not going to get to Daniel Rashbaum's closing today. This video here is about just under 2 hours long, so that'll do us for today. But tomorrow we'll probably be back with Daniel Rashbaum's puzzle pieces.
They let Catherine McVanois skim off the top each month, and never over the next 2 years that he was being extorted monthly, these gangsters, remember that money doesn't go to the principal, that $3,000 a month. They never show up to demand the remaining $195,000 that this defendant has agreed to pay them. Then you also need to...
Yindra says he will be looking over the shoulder for the rest of his days. Can you imagine that, guys? Not only do you have to live in a concrete shitbox next to a toilet with no seat forever, not only does your pillow feel like a fire-retardant gym mat, not only are every single one of your meals awful every day, right? And you'll cart it around and herd it around like cattle. Adelson, get up. Adelson, shower. Adelson, rec time. Lockdown, Adelson. You know, not only have you got to deal with all that, hardly ever seeing the fucking sky, but also on top of everything, when you're a target like this chump, you've got to look over your shoulder for some serious dudes with a shiv, you know, serious dudes. What a drag that's going to be for the rest of your life, man. And for what? For what? To get Ben and Lincoln down to Miami so they could be spoilt rich kids forever. Just unbelievable.
To find reasonable that over the 2 years of this supposed extortion layaway plan, That the defendant continued to do what? Send these kissy faces and love texts to Catherine McBanois. He's sending these messages to a woman who got him into this mess, and he says he didn't suspect she was involved. What?
Georgia, perhaps you didn't hear. They actually grew closer after the extortion because she was protecting him. The extortion never went up. Oh, all his excuses must have sounded so good to him in his head when he was rehearsing this, writing things down on his toilet paper in his cell, you know, practicing for days and days and months, just going over the same lines, the story in his head, going through every document. I mean, he convinced himself that it sounded plausible. And still probably thinks that he did a great job. Daniel Rashbaum gave me a 95. Okay. Whatever helps you sleep, man.
What do we know about
One eye open.
this man? He didn't suspect she was involved. She's taking the money. He's never even heard from the bad guys. He didn't see it that way, that she got him into this mess. They grew closer after she began extorting him for $3,000 a month. Meanwhile, the defendant and Catherine McBanois.
Well, thanks so much for the super chat, Laura. For the, what is that? Canadian dollars. Thank you so much, Laura. 10 sleeps, y'all. Justice for Dan Markel. 2 right justice for Dan Markel. And justice is coming. Justice, a little bit step closer to justice is just 10 sleeps away, guys. And then there'll be a little bit more coming, right?
Break up. She continues to maintain her direct and indirect contact with Sigfredo Garcia, the man who's extorting him, the man who murdered his former brother-in-law in cold blood. But he sees her as a friend. The kissy faces and the I love yous continue. Even after Catherine McBanois got back together with the man who executed Dan Markel, the father of his young nephews, and a guy who's actively extorting him, this defendant continued to reach out to her over and over again to offer her favors and gifts, including a birthday gift for Garcia, and to tell her he loves her and how lucky he is to have her in his life. Lucky? Next, to find a reasonable doubt here, you have to find it reasonable that the defendant never texted or talked about this first layer of extortion. Why? According to him, because Catherine McBanois said, let's never talk about this. So they did. Then you have to believe he never reported or revealed this information to law enforcement out of fear of the gangsters. And finally, you have to believe that this living in fear of death by gang members over 2 years didn't cause a change in his general demeanor that his friends noticed, but later the bump from law enforcement did. He says that's because, well, I became worried that I might be falsely arrested. So I wasn't a hot mess when I was being extorted by gang members and threatened to be killed and my whole family killed. But I became a hot mess when I started to get worried that the cops might be getting closer. And I have no real way of knowing if all this stuff sounds ridiculous to you, if it sounds reasonable to you, or if y'all just heard so much stuff that you're totally confused and can't even remember what the evidence in the case showed. But they only need to get one of you confused enough to derail this whole thing, right? So I've got to go through each thing with you. Your verdict has to be unanimous. So I want to go through the testimony, I want to review the evidence, and I want to spend a little bit more time talking about this multitude of explanations the defense has offered in an effort to really turn each piece of evidence on its head. This is Dan Markel. He is the victim in this case. A brilliant lawyer, a funny guy, a son, colleague, a brother, a mentor, and a friend. But most of all, a father. A dedicated and loving father whose downfall was brought about by the fact that his number one priority was maximizing his access to those two little boys in the wake of a bitter divorce from their mother. And despite the defense's efforts to characterize their client as the real victim here, Dan Markel remains the only victim in this case. The only thing he was guilty of is fighting like hell for those kids. And he lost. He didn't lose in court, but he lost. This is what he looked like before this defendant hired a hitman to kill him. And this is what he looked like afterwards. The evidence has shown that on July 18th, 2014, this brilliant man was gunned down in broad daylight in the driveway of his own home. His horrific death ultimately set police down two separate paths following the two most promising leads they had. The first was to chase down that Prius that Mr. Geiger saw fleeing the crime scene. And we'll examine those efforts in detail. The second path was to ask, as we would in any murder investigation, who might want to have done this? Who would want Dan Markel dead? And within 1 hour of the shooting, before Professor Markel was even pronounced dead, this path was already pointing to the defendant.
Now, it really didn't help matters that Dan was killed Professor Markel was killed at his home address and that nothing was stolen, right? So it's not a robbery gone wrong. Cops instantly look, okay, does it look like someone pulled a TV out of here? Is there a baseball card collection that's missing? What is going on? Not a robbery. And it was at his address. Just as he got back home, he's still in his car, probably someone following him. Oh, and there was a car seen speeding away. So yeah, definitely they followed him to his home address, shot him, didn't steal anything. Very quickly becomes obvious that it was a specific targeted attack, right? If he'd have got shot outside Premier or somewhere on the way home, there would have been much more room for questions around whether the fact it was a drugged out crazy man or a road rage incident. There would have been other possibilities, right? But the fact that it happened at his home, probably just because that was convenient for Luis and Sigfredo. I mean, every fucking decision these guys made was a bumblefuck on the entire mission, right? Did they do anything right? Did they do one thing right? Not at all, really. I mean, just total amateur hour, these guys. What was I saying? What did George say? Oh yeah, just following who would have wanted him killed, because we know it was a targeted attack. So somebody ordered this or did it themselves as a targeted attack. So who would that person be? And the road led back to Magbanawa, back to the family, to Charlie, to Magbanawa. And guess what? The Prius also led back to Magbanawa. Unbelievable.
When his sister revealed to law enforcement that her family hated Dan Markel and that her brother, Charlie, had joked about hiring a hitman to kill him. And this trash talk, of course, would be meaningless had he not been killed by a hitman. So who did it appear had a motive to want Dan Markel dead? His own family. And what offense had Mr. Markel committed against these people? Refusing to let his children be taken away from him?
Here's a question for you guys. Had Wendi not said the joke, would TPD have found out? They would have found out from Jeff, certainly, but Wendi and Charlie could have just not said it to Jeff. So imagine Jeff's never heard that joke and Wendi didn't say it to police. Who would have told police about the joke? It's not like Charlie's up in Tallahassee telling the joke. You know? All the Adelsons aren't talking to police on advice of counsel. So who would have told police that joke if it hadn't been Wendi and Jeff? But, you know, Jeff only knew through Charlie and Wendi, and they could have easily not told Jeff. So that exposure, not good, huh?
Objecting to them disparaging him to his kids. The evidence has shown that the Adelson family was all about psychological warfare. And when all else failed, they were willing to go even further to win. I want to examine this motive in more detail and look at exactly how it's attributable to this defendant. Despite the defense efforts to minimize this, it's really clear that the divorce between Wendi and Danny was a particularly nasty one. They fought over everything, all the way from the children down to the bicycle and the tennis racket. In January of 2013, Wendi Adelson filed a motion to allow her to relocate to South Florida with the kids. They were 2 and 3 at that time. As one basis for this request, Wendi cites the wife's parents reside in Coral Springs and the wife's brother resides 20 minutes away. The children are very close to the wife's parents. Wendi Adelson also alleges in this filing that the husband has also created a hostile work environment for the wife at FSU School of Law. Wendi Adelson viewed herself as stuck in Tallahassee, a characterization which she now denies, but one which was used to describe her situation by Jeffrey Lacasse on the witness stand and also in her own pleadings in these divorce filings. In Markel's answer on page 80, he seeks continued equal time sharing in Tallahassee. He seeks sole parental responsibility on issues related to the education, religion, and medical upbringing of the kids.
You see, I have to correct myself there because recently I made a comment that Dan had given up on pursuing that the boys eat kosher, keep kosher. But I suppose if he's seeking sole parental responsibility on matters that include matters of religion, that would be him insisting upon the boys keeping kosher, which Wendi really didn't want to do, right? Because she didn't want to be going to one of her fancy waspy parties with all of her hoity-toity friends and say, oh, sorry, is there pepperoni on that pizza? Because milk and meat. No. Can't be done. And is that a cheeseburger? No. You can't have that. Now go and read from the Torah. Yes, while the other children have fun with their cheeseburgers, you will be reading from the Torah. She didn't want to do that, right? So the fact that Dan Markel was maintaining his hold on sole parental responsibility for matters including religion and a kosher diet, probably contributed somewhat to Wendi saying, this is not resolvable in a way that suits me, and I need everything to suit me.
Then we go to this May email from Donna Adelson to Wendi. These emails are offered as examples of how invested Donna Adelson was in this litigation and in Wendi's life in general. They reveal that relocation was a huge priority for Donna, and that it was also a high priority for Wendi, Harvey, and the defendant as well. Wendi testified that her mom really wasn't that involved in her divorce proceedings. Again, these emails prove the opposite was true. On May 3rd, 2013, this email references Dan's divorce filing as, quote, his 23-page rant. She then crystallizes the importance of relocation, stating,
just even in that brief half a sentence descriptor summary, his 23-page rant. How many words is that? His 23-page rant. 4 words. Can you feel the venom? It's dismissive. Like, it's beyond dismissive. It's derogatory. Jibbers 23-page rant from Jibbers, by Jibbers, written by Jibbers. I don't know. Why can't you just talk like a normal person? You know, why does everything have to be filled with this hate, this poison in your voice, Donna? I mean, you're toxic. You're like, you know, that stuff that you spray on weeds? I think it's called Roundup, right? You spray on weeds, but if you get any at all of this stuff on something that you don't want to kill, that dies too. Even if you go to a big tree and spray a little bit on one leaf, all right, maybe not a tree, but you know, a large plant, it will travel down the leaf and down into the roots and kill the root, and you'll never see it again. It's like the most toxic poison stuff for plants and probably anything else it touches, but especially plants ever. Donna is like Roundup, right? For the garden. Just poison.
the most important part of your divorce is relocation, in bold. I sincerely hope that your attorney understands this is your, all caps, non-negotiable. She needs to hear from you how serious you are about this and how it will benefit the children with a close-knit family support system, as well as your significantly better paying job. But on June 21st, 2013, Wendy's motion to relocate was denied by the court, with the court finding that the wife has not met her burden of proof that a relocation is in the best interest of the minor children. Like the heroine in her book, Wendi and the boys were officially stuck in this small stop on the way to what we had previously known as civilization. Wendi worked hard to try to convince you that none of this was a very big deal to her.
Yeah, one of our fantastic moderators, I believe, is going to send me a copy of Wendi Adelson's book, because it's not that easy to get here in Portugal because we don't have Amazon. And yeah, so no, I will be expecting it, but I just cannot wait to break down. I like, you know, well-formed prose. You know, I've got a pretty good grasp on what works in written word, and you know, it's like even that one line there, a small stop on the way to what we had previously known as civilization. You know, Wendi has this habit, and I've noticed it in her legal writings as well, her motions. You know, do you remember when she used those 4 words that basically, I know that they're slightly different, but oh shit, I can't remember what they were. It was like immaterial, I can't remember what they were, but she's just not good at writing. When she writes, she listens to the words in her head, and the mistake that she makes is she imagines them being spoken, not read. Right? She seems incapable of, and I don't know if everybody in the chat is even going to know the difference between that. Does that make any sense? Or am I just nuts? Everybody speaks the words when they read, I guess, but there is a difference, you know. I don't know what it is, but she's a shit writer, basically. I can't wait to have a look at her book just so I can see how shit it is.
Her mother or
I think we should read it on air. Have people already been doing that? I never watch other people's channels, but I guess that's been done already, right? But maybe we should, has it been done in an English accent?
her brother. And she said she was expecting to win everything in the divorce. She was expecting Danny to lose everything in the divorce. She was partly right. Danny did end up losing everything, but not in court. She had already lost relocation, and her attorney had to get off the case as a result of whatever Danny was filing in court. And he was poised to really take her through the ringer with this grandma motion, the fraud allegation, and the contempt motion that was all pending. Even if he wasn't going to be successful, folks, it was going to be a very unpleasant ride for Wendi Adelson. But as we have learned, Jibbers hadn't beaten the Adelson family yet. On the stand, Wendi Adelson suggested that relocation was not a big issue for her. It was just suggested by a friend, but the other evidence in the case suggests the opposite. Jeffrey Lacoste said she was a complete mess over the litigation, especially the relocation. She wrote a book about a human rights attorney who was stuck in a small town in the Florida Panhandle because of her hapless Canadian professor husband's job at NFSU. And maybe most importantly, Wendi filed this motion for relocation. Her lawyer didn't file it without her knowing. Was the motion doomed from the start? Wendi clearly hoped not. Email from Donna. In response to the court order denying relocation, Donna emails Wendi, quote, "It's time for action. It's time to take control of your life and not let Jibbers think he's won anything by having you remain in Tallahassee, 8 hours away from the only family you have. Let's show this F blank, 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 what will make him absolutely miserable. And later, the rest of your life, and consequently, Dad's, mine, and yes, even Charlie's, will be affected by how well you can perform/act before July 31st. You can be a good actress when you want to. I've seen you in action. You need to put on the performance of your life. Jibbers hasn't beaten the Adelson family yet." Then on June 25th, this is continued, that same email, we get a plan of action. Take a photo of the boys dressed nicely, standing at the front door by the sign of a Tallahassee church. They're Jewish, remember? Then change your Facebook status to this one so everyone will see this. Perhaps a line under the photo with "New beginnings in Tallahassee" might be nice. How happy do you think you will be? Make arrangements to get the boys caught up with a private tutor at the Teenage Catholic Church who will come to the house to teach the young men about Jesus. If you don't have time to arrange this, I'll be happy to do it for you.
Just look at the way she's laid this out with these bullet points, lengthy descriptions as well. I mean, the picture she's painting as a sales pitch, I suppose, to Wendy's. Tell Dan Markell that the Tallahassee Presbyterian Church is a big part of your life now, and that there will be a Sunday school teacher to come and teach the young men about Jesus. Is that really necessary? We get the point, Donna, you freak.
Jibbers know that your children will be baptized in the Catholic Church, and you'll certainly invite him to the event. I've already checked this out, and the baptism can be arranged within 2 weeks. We can send out evites to Jibbers, his parents, sister, and anyone else you want to invite. 4, I'm looking into summer camp programs for the boys. We will pay for it, even if the boys end up only going for the few days that they're in Tallahassee with you. 5, register them for toddler classes at the church. I've looked into this too. Even if they don't actually go, we can show Jibbers that they are enrolled for the fall semester. And you cannot tell anyone this is an act. Take control from him. Get to him psychologically. He's going to want you to stop this.
Think about what they're doing, all right? I don't know if we've got many religious people in the chat or not. I know that we have quite a number of our Jewish friends that come and give us some good bits of information about practices within the Jewish faith, and it's good to learn that. But what the Adelsons, we know that they don't give a shit about any religion, right? You heard Donna Adelson, religion is brainwashing, control the masses, mind control. You know, they're really not holy people. I mean, I guess that much seems obvious. But they're actually using the facility of the church and a priest who whatever you call it, a preacher, whatever it is, a vicar, I don't know. They're using all of that well-intended stuff, you know, as a manipulation tool to really stick it to this guy in a vicious, horrible, hellish way, right? I mean, it's quite something. You know, it's one thing to be vicious and cutting and ruthless, but to use something as the church or any faith, any tool of faith as your tool of sticking it to the manipulation of this man. I mean, it's just funny, isn't it? Nasty work.
You have one final opportunity to make him angry. We want him ticked off so he realizes that he could lose control over his kids. We plan to make a financial offer to him to allow this relocation.
I agree, Aaron. There is a big difference between, Aaron says there's a big difference between cultural Jews and spiritual Jews. And yeah, but the Adelsons are not even cultural Jews, right? I mean, they visit Israel, but I get the feeling that's for just, I don't know, some business arrangement or something. I mean, they don't keep kosher.
You need to work this plan, and we'll help you through it so that it may affect how much we offer him. Maybe he's willing to let you relocate if he knew his children could attend this private Hebrew academy. Or perhaps he'd like them to invite him to a Christmas party at their other Sunday school. Let's get this going now. I know you would never want to think that you didn't do absolutely everything you could to come down to your family. Dad and I have changed our lives this year to support you and assist you and the boys in every possible way.
Cassandra says, Donna is so unhinged, isn't she, Cassandra? And don't forget, all of these emails that we're listening to now are just, 2 weeks away from being read out to Donna in court in her own murder trial, presumably with her on the stand, being asked questions about what she meant when she said this. Whew. With a fresh jury listening to it and taking it in. We've all heard this stuff before, but the jury, it's going to be news to them, right?
Charlie has accepted the loss in the office business income for us to do this because he loves.
This is a big part of Charlie's motive, aside from Donna being in his ear 24 hours a day. Have you made the arrangements? The paella chef, Dad's big birthday present. I know you'll come through. I know you'll come through like a good golden child would. Apart from that pressure, he's losing money and he's having to do more work because his dad's not, he's got less time on the jet ski, less time in Skyline Chili where he can eat a bowl of chili. He's probably only been able to finish half his bowl of chili before he's got to get back to work.
Loves you and wants only the best possible future for you. It's time for you to show us that you can put on the performance of your life for the next few weeks. And then on June along the same lines, criticizing the judge and Wendy's attorney and adding, obviously the court isn't out to help you. It's clear since Judge Hobbs' last ruling that she could care less about anything you have to say on your behalf. You need to help yourself. You know, Wendi, most of the wars that have been fought for the last couple of thousand years have been fought over religion. These emails are such telling glimpses into the family dynamics behind this murder. This email is just an example of how relentless Donna Adelson was. And it's clear from these emails that she's conferring with the defendant on these plans that she's proposing. Charlie brought up a good point when he said that Americans were dropped behind enemy lines during World War II wearing Nazi uniforms to get what they wanted. They had a job to get done and they did what they needed.
How often do these guys speak about Nazis? I mean, forget this case. Just think about the entire family, well, not the family history, but, you know, this family before this case. Within this case, we've got American soldiers would drop behind enemy lines wearing Nazi uniforms to get what they wanted, blah, blah, blah. I couldn't care less if the boys were, if you brought the boys down here dressed in Hitler Youth outfits, and then Charlie in Dolce Vita is, it's going to be Nazi shit. How often does this come up?
Needed to accomplish it. You have a job to get done in a very short time frame to accomplish it. If you dress the kids up in Hitler Youth uniforms and brought them down here, I could care less if it was an act of defiance that would show Jibbers that he's not in control. Why not stand up to this fucker? Why not fight? That's all this is, Wendi, an act of defiance that will put a scare into this jackass. It will infuriate him. You need to see the big picture. You need to look into the future of what a life without your only family nearby teaching in Tallahassee with Danny always in the picture will give you. It's not a pretty picture. Not everything one has to do in life is comfortable or easy. The extremism that Jibbers is already teaching the boys is nothing more than brainwashing. Religion is brainwashing, control of the masses. I don't think you realize the type of offer we're considering.
Hello, Ashley MP. Are you a member of Parliament, Ashley?
We're planning on you, Charlie, Dad, and I going as high as equal parts in a $1 million offer. That's $333,000 from each of us. We're a team. We can't do this without your help.
Anybody in the chat got $333,000 in the bank? You know, just spare, just hanging around. If you ever need to pay someone off, it's available without it like affecting your life. Just additional cash. You know, $333,000. Imagine what you could do with that money.
You've already lost relocation according to the legal system. Well, it is about winning and losing. We're trying to get a win. You deserve it. You deserve so much more than a life without family teaching in Tallahassee. Even though the divorce was final on July 31st, 2013, the anger and bitterness associated with this split was still festering. Litigation continued and even increased as both parties filed motions over the next several months alleging that the other was violating the marital settlement agreement, and both parties seeking to have the other side held in contempt of court. In October of 2013, Wendi filed a motion to enforce the marital settlement agreement and have Dan held in contempt. And Dan was hearing, and the defendant was hearing about all of this as it went on from his mother, as indicated in the emails and in the text messages shown here as well. Here she's telling him how terrible things are for Wendi and how it's negatively affecting his dad's health. Then later that month, when Wendi was about to make the second dumbest mistake of her life after marrying Dan Markell by buying a house in Tallahassee, Charlie says Wendi probably hasn't mentioned it to him because it's stupid.
She never told me. Why is she doing this? She never mentions it to me on the phone. I guess it's because it's stupid. Did Danny give her permission to move? Schools?
And then after he gets Wendi to pull the plug on the house, he's praised as the miracle worker that solved this problem. This text was sent on Halloween of 2013, the very day that Catherine McDaniel testified this defendant broached the subject to her of, hey, do you know anybody that could rough somebody up? The defendant was hearing about Wendi's situation regularly from Donna. Here we see Donna telling the defendant how angry at Wendi's attorney and stressed out Wendi is. That's on February 15th of 2014. And here's another text from Donna Adelson to Charlie Adelson 4 days later, discussing the details of Danny's actions and expressing how much she hates him.
If you speak to Wendi today, tread lightly. Don't ask questions about the depot, her lawyer, etc. Tough time, and she's really stressed out. The asshole showed up at soccer yesterday. And when she tried to leave with the boys, he said, no, stay here and play with Abba. So, yeah, she to the boys... She told the boys that Abba had to leave, and he said, no, I don't. Of course. She woke up to another email from him telling her that she is lying to the boys about their father's whereabouts and that this will be brought before the court. Such a... something was Wendi's day. He is allowed to attend the children's activities, but that's where it ends. What a fucking psycho. He's just trying to see his kids, right? Play soccer with the kids, with his 3-year-old and 4-year-old boy. I mean, what's the fucking problem?
Here on March.
Oh, Amy, right. Amy says, what the fuck, Donna is so aggressive. Why the fuck Donna is so aggressive? But yeah, I mean, she's like a rabid dog.
March 4th, 2014, we have Donna planning to speak in private with the defendant while she's at the rest stop in Gainesville. She asks him to delete this message after he reads it. Although he's not with Harvey, and Harvey nor his birthday are mentioned in this text message. All that's mentioned in this text message is,
what does it say? I can't talk now, but I'll text you before we stop in Gainesville, where I can go to the bathroom and have a moment of privacy. Then I'll call. Please pick up because I will have very limited alone time today. Erase this text after you read it. You see, they're just so deceitful, even with each other, even among the plotters. They're lying and hiding in the bathroom to make calls.
In this text message. All that's mentioned in this text message is, I'm going to pull over at a rest stop and talk to you in private. This is the grandma motion. On March 26, 2014, less than 4 months prior to this murder, the defendant files his grandma motion, the counter motion for enforcement of marital settlement agreement on parenting issues, and motion for contempt and sanctions. Again, alleging that Wendi is not facilitating communication between he and the kids and getting after Donna personally. In this filing, Dan Markell alleges that on 3 separate occasions in November of 2013, the children informed him of their maternal grandmother, Donna Adelson, disparaging him. The boys indicate that, quote, "Grandma says you're stupid. She says you are trying to take her sunshines away from her." And, quote, "Grandma says she hates you." Dan Markell requests the court, quote, enjoin the former wife from allowing.
Thanks so much, C. Malone. You're becoming one of our staunch supporters at True Crime Metrix. Thank you very much for the super chat. And C. Malone says, let's give her it up to the chat. Yes, let's, with a super chat and a super sticker. Thank you, C. Malone.
Allowing the maternal grandmother to have unsupervised time with the children and to impose appropriate limitations to safeguard the children from being subjected to disparaging comments about their father. Contrary to what Wendi Adelson told us, we learned this issue was taken seriously by both sides, and that Dan Markell was particularly hot at the time of his death because of some recent issues that were going on. So to the extent that there was any banana bread peace offering made, it apparently fell short of diffusing the issues within this family. This situation was a pressure cooker, and it was about to blow. As we learned, this grandma motion was never decided by the court because Dan Markell was murdered before it could be heard. Whether or not that is a coincidence in timing is up to you all to decide. Wendi told you that she and Dan were getting along pretty well at the time leading up, or the weeks leading up to his murder. But this assertion does not fit with the rest of the evidence in this case. In fact, her own court filings are completely contrary to that assertion. In addition, her boyfriend at the time, Jeffrey Lacasse, told you all that she took all of this very seriously, that she became upset every time there was a filing, and that her behavior became increasingly emotional and erratic as the time led closer and closer up to what ultimately was the murder day. According to Lacasse, she was especially concerned about the relocation issue. And Stephen Webster, he was Professor Markell's attorney, testified, told us that Markell was irate at the time of his death over 2 issues. The first being Wendi enrolling one of the kids in a school without consulting him, and the second one being him overhearing Donna Adelson refer to him as stupid on a recent Skype visit that he had with the boys. So this was far from the peaceful situation that Wendi was trying to sell you. Why was she trying to sell you that? Was she trying to protect her brother? She even told law enforcement at her interview on the day of the murder that she wanted everyone held accountable for this to the fullest extent of the law, unless it was her family. The defense seems to be telling you the litigation between Danny and Wendi was not a very big deal because minimizing the litigation minimizes the motive for the Adelson family to want Dan Markell dead. They even called Wendi's attorney to tell you that relocation was a lost cause. But what she actually said was, yes, I lose most of these motions, but in this case, I actually thought there was a chance because of some of the surrounding circumstances. Then I thought, well, maybe they called her to say the divorce was routine, but what she actually said was this case was odd. That was her word. Mainly because Dan Markell came after her personally, forcing her to withdraw from the case, which had never happened before. So what her testimony proved was that this was not a routine, run-of-the-mill divorce proceeding. It was one of her more difficult cases. And she didn't even have Donna in her ear, like the defendant did. So the motive was clearly there. The question then becomes, was the defendant successful in distancing himself from that motive in your eyes as jurors? He says that the litigation had no impact on his life. The emails suggest otherwise. He's included on these texts. He's all over the wiretap, meddling in Wendi's life with Donna. Could the defendant have cared enough about his sister's marital problems to commit murder? Maybe, maybe not. But if he didn't, his mom certainly cared enough for both of them. And she was in his ear all the time. In defendant's own words, you can't have a miserable mom. To illustrate this point, I refer you back to the emails and to that phone call that I played that happened before the bump, where Donna and the defendant are discussing this boyfriend of Wendy's at that time, Dave. This call, along with the call about Wendi taking a particular job, which is also on that same exhibit, I think it states 130, was offered as examples to show you how the dynamics work in this family. Wendi appears to be the weakling of the pack. She needs to be protected. She needs to be helped. She needs to be coddled. She needs to be saved by Donna and the defendant. Donna is the overbearing matriarch who nags everyone to death about whatever it is that's currently on her. I call it the wheel. The wheel's turning all the time, right? And Wendi getting away from Dan Markell and moving to South Florida was number one on the wheel. It was the top priority in 2013 and in 2014. And this defendant fancied himself the savior of this family. Equal parts black sheep and mama's boy, he would often try to help Wendi at Donna's bidding. When a problem was perceived regarding
The two, no, Soap is here, but she's meditating. Yeah, are you still alive, Soap? They're worried about you in the chat. Okay, yeah, no, she's found inner peace, and it's good. It's good. I'm glad. I think it's Georgia Cappleman. Georgia Cappleman always sends Soap into a very deep sleep.
Wendy's love life, aka this breaking up with Dave situation. Shouldn't break up with Dave. Dave's a great guy. Donna enlists the defendant to go in and fix it, to solve the problem. When Wendi didn't know what was best for her regarding a job opportunity, Donna sent the defendant to fix it. And the evidence has shown that Dan Markell was a major problem for Wendi, and that meant he was a major problem for Donna, who in turn made Dan Markell a major problem for this defendant. Enter Catherine Magbanua, who had connections to a criminal element, and she presented an opportunity to the defendant to do what he does and solve this problem. On Halloween 2013, the defendant began the process of soliciting Catherine Magbanua to commit murder. Magbanua solicited Garcia. Garcia brought in Rivera. So if the seed of this conspiracy was planted in the spring of 2013, when Donna was looking into converting the kids to Christianity or making this $1 million offer to Dan Markell, it took root that summer when the relocation was denied and the defendant began, quote, looking into all options to solve the problem of Danny Markell, including hiring a hitman. And the conspiracy grew further still when Dan Markell filed that motion to preclude Donna from having unsupervised contact with the grandkids, the grandma motion. And as Wendi Adelson relayed to Jeffrey Lacoste just 5 days before the murder, she was never going to be able to move to South Florida unless something happened to Danny. This conspiracy spread when...
You see, when you put it all together, as far as the motive, and makes it all very funny when Wendi Adelson's going on the stand. At that point, no, my parents they'd gotten along better, and banana bread, she baked banana bread, and Danny, she hugged Danny, and it was a beautiful, they understood each other. Think about everything that's as far as the motive. You've got Wendy's law license, preclude the children from seeing Donna unsupervised, no moving to Florida. Oh, the list goes on and on. Oh, they have to keep kosher. Man, they must have wanted to kill him 100 times. There's so much motive.
And the defendant met someone who could actually get this thing done. Someone who was in a position of trust in his life, a person who had connections to the kind of people who, for a price, were willing to point a gun at a complete stranger and pull the trigger. And guess what wasn't a problem once Dan Markel was dead? Relocation. Within a couple days, Wendi and the kids moved to South Florida. She changed the names of Professor Markel's children from Markel to Adelson. And just like that, their father was erased. No more squabbles over kosher diets or visitation. Status as a felon and a gang member are definitely things you should consider when you're weighing his testimony in this case. But please consider that his resume as a bad guy was precisely why he was selected to do this gruesome job. Rivera's gang status made him a more attractive candidate to do this murder with Garcia. In the hot tub in March of 2014, the defendant mentions his connection to a Cuban criminal element. Jeffrey Lacoste reported this within a couple days of the murder, when he couldn't have known the ethnicity of the killer. The evidence has shown that the connection the defendant had was through Catherine Magbanua, and the criminal element was, of course, Garcia and Rivera. And we know that at the time defendant made that statement in the hot tub, the plan to kill Dan Markel was already well in the works. That statement was made just 3 months before the killer's first trip to Tallahassee in June of 2014. The statement reveals that the defendant wasn't scared of Catherine Magbanua and her associates. To the contrary, he was boastful. He was bragging about it. He was the big man who was going to solve his little sister's problem, make his mom proud, and get away with it because he was thinking of everything. And he later would say and call JJ that nothing was done improper and suggest that no evidence could be available to tie the killers to him or his family.
What's Daniel Rashbaum laughing at? Look at him. We need to go back. Catch his look. What is with his nose? Is he like a serious cokehead or something? What is going on with him?
In June of 2014.
How is that your thing? The guy has probably gone through his whole life before this case with no one really noticing that, right? But as soon as we started looking, it became like he does it like 3 times every 5 minutes at least. And this is another thing he does with the pen in the mouth. Looks like a circus animal. What is he doing? That is not normal. I'm screenshotting that. What is going on with this guy? I can't, as much as he annoys me, I'm really looking forward to seeing him again at Donna's trial. We've seen him in submotions and everything, but he's not really doing his big show there, is he? Really. There's no jury. We can only see the side of his head most of the time. But he does things like this that you just can't predict that. That just happens with Dan, Anyway, what's he going to smell he starts laughing in a minute. What is that about?
Before the killer's first trip to Tallahassee in June of 2014. The statement reveals that the defendant wasn't scared of Catherine Magbanua and her associates. To the contrary, he was boastful. He was bragging about it. He was the big man who was going to solve his little sister's problem, make his mom proud, and get away with it because he was thinking of everything. And he later would say and call JJ that nothing was done improper and suggest that no evidence could be available.
I think Charlie just passed him something, right? What was it? Like a racist joke. How many Mexicans does it take to do a closing argument? What would the punchline be? Can anyone finish that punchline in the chat? How many Mexicans does it take to do a closing argument? Honest to God, what is Charlie really going to pass Daniel Rashbaum of any value?
Available to tie the killers to him or his family. And he was confident enough of this to brag about it in that hot tub setting, which he thought could never come back to him. He was untouchable. Because if push ever really came to shove, who are you going to believe?
What's this, Charlie? Answering Aaron. Aaron says they were shown in court but never became public. What? The autopsy photos? We have them. Oh, hello, Veronica Sawyer, and thank you so much for the super chat, Wendi. We need that on an alarm. Yeah, the I assume you're talking about the autopsy photographs, Aaron. We have them here, but they're not actually. I mean, obviously they're pictures of a dead person, but it's not like over the top, grotesque gore. You know, it's a dead guy with a bullet hole in his head.
An oral surgeon or a gang member. He's banking on that. In regards to Rivera's plea deal, the actual only condition of his plea deal is to tell the truth. And what did he tell us? Catherine Magbanua hired Garcia, and Garcia hired him to do a murder. Why? To help the lady who he understood to be the dentist's sister to get her kids. Aside from fitting with the other evidence in the case, there were a few things that independently corroborated Rivera's testimony. One is that accidental discharge that he told us took place in the rented Prius. This was a fact we didn't know before and were able to confirm upon reinspection of the vehicle. He also told us about the location and timing of the money drop on the morning after the murder at his and Jessica's residence, which was able to be confirmed or corroborated initially by phone records and now also by Catherine Magbanua's testimony. And of course, the phone records confirm Rivera did come to Tallahassee, not just on the July trip, which we knew about, but also on that first June scouting trip or attempted murder trip. The communication records tell us a few other things too. That's the June trip. July, June. This slide shows all the calls between our parties on the night before the shooters made that June trip to Tallahassee. You can see a 25-minute call from Catherine Magbanua to the defendant at 9:17 p.m. on June 2nd, 2014. This call was placed while Catherine Magbanua was consistent with traveling on her way back from Comfort Rental Car, where the first rental car was rented, to her residence. As soon as the defendant hangs up with Katie, he calls his parents' landline and has a 25-minute conversation. On the stand, the defendant was asked about the use of landlines and whether he believed them to be more secure. He testified that on the call he was being asked about at that time, that he was talking about switching over to a landline because he was in a place that had bad reception. If there's bad reception in South Florida at a dental office, what about all the other mentions of using a landline that we hear on the wire? Surely he wasn't in a place with bad reception for all those calls. And why call the parents on the landline? Surely they have reception in their South Beach high-rise. In the 2 years of phone records that were examined in this case, the defendant talks to his parents on the landline 28 times, or 0.07% of the times that he talks to them. So mostly on the cell phone by a large majority. 3 of these 28 times were on the days that the cars were rented to do these trips to Tallahassee. Whether or not that is a coincidence is entirely up to you. After the killers returned from Tallahassee on that
Yeah, I called them on their house phone. They'd had the same number since 1979. Yeah, but we've looked at every call that you made over 2 years, and you only called them on the house phone 0.07% of the time. And 3 of those times were at the time that you might want to not be tracked. They're making it all up, no evidence.
entirely up to you. After the killers returned from Tallahassee on that first trip, we have a couple text messages of interest. On June 8th, 2014, the defendant indicates he's still working on Dad's birthday present, and Donna indicates, I know you'll come through. Then on July 6th, we've got Wendi Adelson with a location at or near her parents' place when she texts Dan Markell and confirms he's going to be in town.
Aaron Gray, they were included in Katie Magbanowa's appeal document, which is like ridiculously long. What is it, Amy? It's like 55,000 pages long or something. It's crazy. It's like a 10 gig file for a PDF. They're in there.
For his own murder. This slide depicts the night before the second trip. We know Catherine Magbanowa and the defendant are together that evening at her place. He departs between 12:42 and 1 a.m. And then after the defendant departs Catherine Magbanowa's residence, we've got Catherine Magbanowa calling Sigfredo Garcia. So within minutes of the defendant leaving, she calls Garcia. She talks to Garcia several more times into the wee hours of that night, the last one being at 1:56 a.m. And then at 9 a.m. the next morning, Garcia calls the rental car place. Once the Prius is rented, the second trip begins. The Prius is rented at 6:15 p.m. on July 15th, 2014. There are several calls between our parties on the day that the Prius is rented. So we just talked about the night before the Prius was rented. On the day the Prius was rented, we've got these two calls, several calls, including these two calls from the defendant to his parents' landline. Garcia and Rivera then depart for Tallahassee July 16th, about 2 p.m., and arrive in Tallahassee around 1 a.m.
Yeah, see you later, Indra. Thanks for stopping by.
Although this trip was only about 36 hours from the time they left Miami to the time they returned, there were 12 phone events between the defendant and Catherine Magbanowa during that time, and there were 4 phone events between the defendant and Donna Adelson during that time frame, including late into the night on the night before the murder. On July 17th, Magbanowa relayed to the shooters that this murder had to be done that day because the victim was scheduled to leave town the next day. And we confirmed that Dan Markell was in fact scheduled to leave for New York City the next morning on July 19th. It's hard to imagine how Luis Rivera could have obtained this information, if not in that pattern that we consistently observe in this case. Defendant to Magbanowa, to Garcia, to Rivera, and back.
It's easy, Georgia Cappleman. What are you talking about? A computer whiz like Luis Rivera? He's probably on a laptop right now, Googling professors all across Tallahassee, every single professor. He goes through the directory like a machine, right? And then suddenly he finds the prof's blog, where Professor Markell would sometimes post travel plans. And then he knows everything, doesn't he? He knows where to go, when to be there, when to get the hit so he can get back down to Miami and tell Catherine McBanower to go and see her boyfriend. Let him know that we've just killed that ex-brother-in-law that he hates, and we want all the money, or we're going to kill him next. Oh, how was he surprised that that didn't work? I mean, he really bought his own product, didn't he? He spent so much time selling it to himself. I mean, you could have come up with something better than that. In a year and a half, you could have come up with something better than that. But he didn't, did he? No, he bought his own product and Daniel Rashbaum's product quite early on, and then fucking pissed away the time, wasting the time, practicing something that was never going to work. Oh, Charlie boy, look at you now, Charlie. Look at you now, eh? What are you doing now? Well, now he's in the bloody Leon County, isn't he? He's back in Tallahassee. I bet it's nice. But it's nice to get out of South Dakota for a couple of weeks, eh? 3 weeks or so.
Back the other way. Certainly you're not really to believe that the killers divined this information from the professor's blog.
It's probably the closest he'll ever be to Miami again. Yeah? Tallahassee.
That's not reasonable. Wendi offered that Danny sometimes put his travel information on Facebook, but you learned from Agent Sanford that there was no information about this particular trip on Danny's Facebook, so they didn't get it from there. This is because, as Rivera and McBanower both told you, this information came in the form of that letter from Defendant through Captain McBanower. How would these two hitmen even know where to go or who to kill?
Hello, Toronto Tina. All the way from East York.
They hadn't been given any kind of instruction. Catherine McBanower said she knew the plan was to kill Wendy's ex, but she never knew his full name until after he was killed. She did, however, deliver that envelope that the defendant put in her diaper bag to Sigfredo Garcia. The paper, she knew, contained the instructions for the murder. Defendant advised Catherine McBanower that she should not touch the envelope or open it, as he had taken precaution to ensure that his prints and DNA.
And welcome to everybody in the chat, 154 of you. How are we doing on those likes, guys? Do we all remember to leave a like on the way in? I think that's what people should get in the habit of doing now. You just come in, you know you're going to be here for at least a couple of hours, right? Leave a like on the way, and then you don't have to remember. Yeah. How are we doing on those likes? Ooh, we are doing okay, but I still think we can do better. You know, definitely. So anyone who hasn't left a like, please do go and leave a like. It does help us out massively, helps our rep, helps the algorithm, and helps everything else.
Would not be on it, that it would be untraceable to him, and she should do the same. She was to deliver the envelope to Garcia, and that's what she did. This is corroborated by Rivera, who says Garcia had a paper with him on the first trip, and it contained a picture of Dan Markel and a printed address.
Oh yes, and if anyone would like to support the channel, there is a link to buymeacoffee.com in the description for the video, where you could buy us a coffee.com. We do drink a lot of coffee. In fact, I might have one now, because it's 3:45 in the morning. You know, we really have to stay up with these late nights doing Eastern Standard Time, you know. Yeah, it's a big ask. It's changed my whole life. It's completely upside down. I don't know what day of the week it is. Well, it's Tuesday somewhere, I think. Yeah, if you want to support the channel, there's a link to buymeacoffee.com in the description for the video. That is a great way to support the channel. And we thank you to everyone who supports the channel on buymeacoffee.com. Also, we've got some new merch in the store today, guys. Where's that great new merch? New merch. What was it again? I forgot. Oh, we'll come back to it.
On the day of the murder, we have communications between our parties as listed here, with the red line representing the time of the murder. This flurry of calls between our persons of interest demonstrates the usual call pattern that we're seeing. Donna to the defendant, to Catherine Ibano, to Garcia and back. We have Wendi getting a text message on the day of the murder about her TV repair appointment from her mother, Donna Adelson. It indicates that Best Buy is on their way over to help you with the TV sets in your living room.
Okay, so here's our fantastic new merch. Where is it? What was it? Oh, that's the old stuff. Yeah, head on over to the merch store, and get yourself a "You're either stupid or you're lying" t-shirt. Our favorite quote from Charlie Adelson when he was talking to June Umchender on the wiretaps there, right? What else have we got? Where's our top seller? Our top seller is "Don't be an Adelson." Don't be an Adelson, yeah? Don't be an Adelson. In a variety of colors. Fantastic stuff. We're going to be adding more and more stuff to the merch shop, guys. Women's tees, all sorts of products. Look at those fantastic products. Variety of colors. Yes, don't be an Adelson. You're either stupid or you're lying. I think the next one we're going to do is, I don't know who Taco is. And also, Patreon gets special merch discounts. So if you want to become a supporter on Patreon, there is also a link in the description where you can support the channel like that. You can also leave super chats, super stickers, and super thanks. Thank you very much. And social networks and Discord. Links in the description, guys. Check them out. Yeah, what is that with Donna saying the TV, you know, the one in the living room? Is that a code? I don't know. Are they just all fuckheads? I think these people talk in code so much that they don't even know themselves what is real. You know? Donna and Harvey will be cooking and you know, Donna will say, "Hey, Harvey, did you take the chicken out of the oven?" And Harvey will look up and sort of think for a moment and say, "You mean the stuff around the pool house?" And Donna will be like, "No, fuckhead, the chicken in the oven. I smell burning." You know, they think everything is code, even when they're not talking in code. Oh, oh. Shit.
This defendant that lasts about, 30 minutes? No. 18 minutes. So this is about 30 minutes before the murder when they hang.
Sam Boto, good to see you, my friend. Sam says it's not just the pepperoni meat with milk situation. It's that pepperoni is usually made from pig, unclean in the religion. Yeah, also, of course, pork as well. But even if it's beef pepperoni, you know, if you go to Dubai, they still have pepperoni pizza, but it's all beef pepperoni, and that wouldn't be allowed either, you know, or a chicken supreme, or anything. Basically, no pizza unless it's vegetable supreme, right?
Up. They say they were discussing this TV that was not repairable. The TV that he gave her as a divorce.
Or a margarita. You know, have a margarita pizza. What's wrong with that? Plain cheese, double cheese. Why not?
Divorce present because it's cheaper than hiring a hitman. Only you guys can assess if you think that might just be a coincidence and nothing more. The Prius is at premiere at 9:16 a.m. The last phone communication between Garcia and Rivera is at 9:16. Afterwards, the phones turn off, consistent with what Rivera told you. We turned our phones off. because we knew we were about to commit the murder, and they don't pop back up until I think about 12:30. The bus video catches them turning onto Benton Road to do the murder at 10:51 a.m., whereby they pull up right behind Professor Markel in his driveway. Sigfredo Garcia gets out of the Prius and fired. Dan Markel raised his arm to protect himself, but it was no use. Professor Markel was executed at close range, whereby Garcia got back in the Prius and Rivera.
He totally knew, didn't he? You know, he totally knew that a gunman, all this shit's been going on with his psycho ex-wife, and a gunman shows up on your driveway. Big Cuban-looking gunman. He totally knew it was Wendi that set it up, right? Shame. What a final thought to have.
Drove them away. Markel was left there to suffer and die. If not for James Geiger, there's no telling how many hours he might have suffered there.
See you later, Tina. Good to have you here.
Alone and unaided. He fought for his life for 14 long hours before he finally succumbed to his injuries. The autopsy confirmed that he was shot twice at close range with a .38 caliber revolver, consistent with what Rivera said they brought as the murder weapon. Next, he was stripped, x-rayed, photographed, and dissected, because he had become a piece of evidence. When Garcia and Rivera get back on the road, they're on a second bus video, leaving town at 10:55. That narrows the time.
Wow, this is really interesting, Albert. Albert says, Christina, just saying an artificial intelligence program that analyzes the crime could come up with a smarter, more believable defense than the ridiculous one Charlie invented. This is going to be the future of criminal defense, isn't it? And prosecution. We'll just input the data into a machine, and who can write the best software will win the case. It's like those chess games. Have you ever played those chess games with a computer and put it on level 10? It is impossible to beat. You know, anything you do, the computer will beat you in 3 moves. It's ridiculous because they've learned every calculation of the moves, right? And in chess, you got to think 10 moves in advance, and only a computer can possibly do that.
Of this shooting down to a 4-minute window between 10:51 when they're seen turning on the Benton and 10:55 when they're caught fleeing the scene. And then we've got the 911 call from Mr. Geiger at 11:01 a.m. The first phone call that either Garcia or Rivera make after turning off their phones to do the murder. So first call after that is at 12:30, and it's Garcia to Catherine Magbanua. Magbanua assures them that they'll get their money the next day. This is the same time frame, roughly, that Wendi Adelson was visiting the crime scene. Wendi indicated that she went to turn onto Trescott from Centerville Road, observed a roadblock, and then turned around. But we learned that what she said happened could not have happened. Instead, the roadblock was all the way down here by the blue dot. I've got 2 blue dots. The one at the top left of the page there is where the roadblock was, that yellow line, 3 to 5 houses down from the scene. Trescott and Centerville is all the way down where the other yellow bar is. Visible from the roadblock that she approached and was observed doing so by Officer Brannon were multiple law enforcement vehicles, marked vehicles. There was crime scene tape up. There was a marked vehicle with an officer stationed at the perimeter. It was visible from that position that there was something going on. at her kid's house. The house where they lived with their father.
I thought it was a tree fell down. Electrical things would happen.
And what did Wendi Adelson do upon encountering this roadblock and observing that the police were present on the street where her kids lived? She turned around and proceeded to the liquor store to pick up her bullet bourbon. And the defendant says, well, this is another coincidence because she was asked to bring it to a party. Well, maybe. But the timing of the purchase and the fact that she went out of her way to go by the crime scene on her way to get the bullet bourbon should raise an eyebrow. But it's what she didn't do should raise.
Let's have a look at that map. So there's her house. And this is Trescott. There's lunch. You know, Publix Liquors, Market Square. That is a huge detour. I mean, I guess if she was originally going to go to Publix Liquors or Market Square Liquors, is this red line Trescott? It must be. No. Sorry. I completely got that wrong. There's Trescott. Oh, okay. Then nothing makes sense. Nothing makes sense. I have seen this before. I just couldn't remember. Yeah. So the red line is where she should have gone because Publix Liquors is there, Market Square Liquors is there, and lunch is there, right? But she went all the way down here to go to Trescott and then ABC Liquors.
Eyebrow. But it's what she didn't do that's even more suspicious. She didn't ask Officer Brandon, hey, what's going on? She didn't call Danny. She didn't call the police to make any inquiries or even the daycare to make sure her kids made it there that morning. Remember, Danny had her kids. She didn't even call the daycare. Meanwhile, our shooters are headed back to Miami. They pop up on an ATM camera at 6:45 p.m. in Pembroke Pines, Florida. And then both of their phones are consistent with being at Rivera's residence as of about 7 p.m. that night. At 8:23 p.m., Catherine Magbanua and the defendant make plans to meet up at his house. At 9 p.m., Donna texts the defendant, outside your house, to which he responds, 10 men. He told you from the witness stand that this text meant that Donna was just passing by his house on her way to Tallahassee and that they weren't meeting up. But Catherine Magbanua testified that when she arrived at defendant's house, the defendant advised her that his parents had just been there and then he thought his mom had physically washed the money, which was damp when Catherine Magbanua received it. Magbanua finds the defendant to be carrying his gun around and in a frantic state. About the time that these two are meeting up at the defendant's house to do the money exchange, Dan Markell is pronounced dead at TMH. So he says he's going to be about 10 minutes out. Here he is, hitting at home at 9:40 p.m. At 9:46, we see Catherine Magbanua, consistent with being at Rivera's residence, and then consistent with heading toward the defendant's residence. She turns her phone off, and it stays off for 11 hours. When Magbanua's phone pops back up, it's 9:44 a.m. on Saturday morning, and she's headed back from the defendant's house, or the direction of his house, toward Rivera's residence. That's the money drop location. These phones are consistent with a meeting at 10:30 at Rivera's, which is the time, date, and place that he advised us he received his
Mute. A. Johnson says that I should smoke a Sherlock Holmes pipe. That would enhance the theater of the mind experience. Okay. Well, I guess we could make one out of a soda can.
His money from Nagbanwa. At 12:13 p.m., the defendant reaches out to Nagbanwa. Defendant, headed to the gym. Are you taking the kids to the beach? It's so nice. Nagbanwa, it's beautiful. Probably the pool. Defendant, nice, have fun.
Right. Yeah, remember that Katie has just left the house with all his money after blindsiding him and saying, listen, my friends killed your brother-in-law and they're going to kill you too if you don't pay up in 48 hours. And then he's on the phone with her saying, hey, the sun is up. The birds are chirping. The beach is waiting. You taking the kids to the beach? Beautiful day. I'm heading to the gym. Yeah, no, I was trying to let her know because she told me that we should never speak of this again. So I was acting like everything was normal to assure her that I wasn't going to be talking about this again and that the Latin kings shouldn't kill me or my family.
Ethan must be happy. This is what he's texting Nagbanwa within hours of her leaving with all the money in his safe. All of the money that he stared at and loved on since he was a child. And he wants to know if she's going to the pool. This might be a good time to remind you that the jury room is not a place to check your common sense. We want you to bring it in there. You have heard two wildly different versions of how this thing went down, and they can't both be right. I mean, somebody's trying to sell you a bill of goods. You were selected with the belief that you would be able to cut through the garbage and make sense of the evidence in this case and render a verdict that speaks the truth. A major problem for the defense theory is the idea that the defendant and Nagbanwa broke up after the murder, but then grew closer together over the next 2 years as she was collecting his monthly extortion payments.
Mute button. See you later, DBs. Good to see you again. Come back soon.
This is one of the more unreasonable parts of the defendant's testimony, or well, it's definitely in the top 4, along with Latin King extortion payment plans, hitmen that hired.
Amy says, True Crime Metrix, why do you think Wendi tried to drive by the crime scene? Do you think it was her curiosity? There are so many weird theories about it. I don't think she wanted to find the body. No, I don't think she wanted to find the body at all. I think she, I don't think that the Adelsons directed the hitmen to have the murder take place at the house. I know that they gave the address, but that was just to locate him and then follow him to somewhere quiet. Because, like we said earlier, if the murder happens in the house and it doesn't look like a botched robbery gone wrong, it's pretty clear that it was a targeted murder, right? Bad for the Adelsons if it is a targeted murder and it was them that did the targeting. Means the cops are onto them straight away, right? So why would the Adelsons want it done at the house? And if they didn't want it done at the house, they wouldn't have told the hitmen to do it at the house. So Wendi wouldn't have known that the murder was going to take place at the house, right? So I think her drive down Trescott was just on the off chance to see if there was any sign that Markel was there or not there. And some people have argued to me, yeah, but Professor Markel kept his car in the garage and he always closed the garage. Well, maybe, but I'd say even people that do that, sometimes they only close the garage at night. Right? Do we really know that this guy was incredibly anal about always closing the garage even when he was going into the house for 5 minutes? I mean, it was the middle of the day. He'd just done his gym, right? He's coming in, he's going to go for a shower. I think she wanted to drive past that house just on the off chance that there was any sign of something, a missing car. An open garage with a missing car would be a good sign for Wendi. Not a confirmation, but an indicator. And I think she needed an indicator. Can you imagine the adrenaline that was running through her that whole morning and the whole rest of the day? I mean, it's not like it stopped when she got into the interrogation room. I think the theory that she wanted to find the body is a complete fantasy and should be immediately discredited completely with prejudice and with certainty. That's ridiculous. Why the fuck would she want to find the body? She's already, well, as we know, not for long under suspicion in the interrogation room. It didn't last long, the suspicion, but she was brought in as the closest person. She knew she would be something of a suspect, even though she wasn't. Imagine if she'd have found the body on top of that and been the only one there. And okay, they'd say, well, there's no gun. There's no gun. She could have got rid of the gun. Yeah, but she doesn't have gunshot residue on her hands. Well, she could have worn gloves. What are you, Matlock? You know, there's no way in hell. And people go, oh, yeah, she's such a crazy psycho. She wanted to look him in the face one more time. Well, he was dead, as far as she knows. She didn't know he was going to hang on for 12 hours, 14 hours, whatever. Yeah, she was driving past that house to see if there was just on the off chance that there was any indicator. That satisfies me. Does anyone disagree? Let us know in the comments if you disagree, and put a red X emoji. Is there one of those? If you disagree.
Themselves to kill someone that their intended future extortion victim hates. And most unreasonable of all is probably that Charlie Adelson, the guy that talks so tough in the hot tub about his unsavory connections, an arrogant man of extraordinary resources, a prize fighter of verbosity, would just lay down and take this in silence. Let's review some of these love checks. We got that one. Then we've got.
Hey, Veronica Sawyer, what is that? I thought it was a red X, but I think it's a 100. What does that mean? You agree? Fantastic, Veronica. Yeah, no, I love it when people have an idea that's not mine and say it in the comments. What is this one from Evan Elizabeth Duke? Wendi thought 2 million life insurance was still in her name, changed to his sister. Social Security, she gets $800,000 by the kids. Well, 862,000. So closer to 9. But yeah, a lot of money from that by the time they're 18. No tag days for Wendi. Lego, agree. She didn't want Dan, but also didn't want anyone else to have him. I don't think she gave a shit about that. It was more she didn't want Dan to be with someone better than her. You know? Amy Adler was a very highly accomplished woman with tenure, a tenured professor at New York University, house in the Hamptons, designer brother. What did he design again? I forgot. I think it was like furniture or something. I can't remember what he designed, but it, a known famous job. The Adelsons love all that shit. House in the Hamptons, old money. Adelsons are new money. So if Dan had gotten with someone that would have been very easy for Wendi to believe was less than her, however she might categorize that, maybe a short, fat, uneducated immigrant in her mind, she'd be fine with it. It wasn't a case of she didn't want anyone else to have him. She didn't give a shit as long as she wins. And what Wendi would have really liked is if Dan became an alcoholic and a drug addict and a meth head and developed a weird sex addiction with large Asian prostitutes and eventually lost his job, lost the will to live, and hung himself because of the divorce. And then she'd go around and tell the story, oh, he was just so unhinged, he just couldn't move on, after me, he couldn't move on. So he took his own life. I took all his stuff and then he took his own life because he was unhinged. She'd love to tell that story.
July 22nd, they're talking about the weather. They're talking about prescription shampoo.
Rayanne says, True Crime Metrix, she would definitely be worried Dan might find someone better than her. Well, he did. That's who he was with. That's Amy Adler right there. That Wendi had just met with her dad and took her dad there for moral support. Can you imagine that? How scary that would be. Your ex comes round and you open the door and they're both nervously standing there with their big dentist grinning teeth. Perfectly white, shiny teeth. Terrifying.
On October 6th, the defendant says, I love you. It makes me feel good that you
Hello, Ryan B. How you doing today, man?
care about me. I'm very lucky to have you as a part of my life. What? Lucky? Lucky. He says, I love you again on 2/24/15. According to him, he's now been making payments for 7 months. He's had her on the payroll for 6 months. No Latin kings have contacted him in any way about collecting his outstanding debt of $195,000. Yet he continues to pay and love on Catherine Magbanua without reservation and without the slightest suspicion that she might be in on this, and without the slightest concern for helping solve the murder of who killed his brother-in-law. Defendant says he believed Catherine Magbanua wasn't taking any of the money even after he put her on the payroll. Checks are going to her because she seemed broke. Defendant's explanation for all the love texts with Catherine Magbanua is that he felt sorry for her. He felt she was in the same position that he was in, being manipulated in the same way that he was. But the fact remains, folks, that she's taking his money. She's connected to the guy that's extorting him. She's connected to the guy that killed his brother-in-law. It defies logic that he would then proceed to grow closer with her. But he has to say that because he can't, there's no other way around these texts. It also defies reason based on what we know of this man, that he would take her for her word and just empty his safe into her purse and then keep paying, presumably forever, without asking any questions, talking about it all, or reporting anything to the police. Magbanua began getting checks from Adelson Institute 2 months after Markel's murder, and she continued receiving checks from that time frame up until the bump. The checks stopped happening at the time of the bump, and you should be asking yourself what that means. Why did the checks stop happening? Well, you would reasonably figure they stopped having because the parties got spooked, because law enforcement, they suspected the bump could be law enforcement. Law enforcement might be getting closer, take her off the payroll. If defendant was being extorted, as he told you on the witness stand, why would the payments stop? Why would the extortionist care if other extortionists had jumped on the bandwagon? Why would the bump impact the defendant's existing obligations to the original Latin Kings? The defendant said he put her on the payroll at Adelson Institute at her request.
Yeah, Paul M. I like that. Do Latin Kings do a reward scheme or just payment plans? No, I think what the Latin Kings do is if you make your first 9 weekly payments, you get what they call a rollover week. And that means that your next 3-week payments are skipped. And then you start another rollover week with the next 8 payments. So your annual fee at the end of the year is actually broken down by about 8% overall. Savings to you. Latin Kings, the gentleman's way to do business.
To help her get insurance for her kids, with the understanding that the money was being funneled through her to someone else and she wasn't actually getting any of the proceeds. She was just going to use that paycheck to assist her with getting subsidized housing or insurance, I think it was, for her kids. But you can see from this slide, which is dated June 24th, 2014, that she's texting him about getting on the payroll prior to this.
So I didn't really see anybody disagree with the needed to check if there was even a sign. You know, if she knew what time he was out the gym, and maybe she didn't know that he was going straight home. But when you've been married to someone, you'll have a pretty good idea what they do when they get out of the gym. If they go straight home, as a general rule, makes sense. You know, he probably took the kids to school in his gym clothes, went to his spinning class or whatever it was, and then maybe he prefers to shower at home, and then he can get dressed at home, do some work from home, maybe have a little bit of lunch at home, and I don't know if he was scheduled to go into work that day or not. It doesn't seem like it. So she would have a pretty good idea to expect him back at the house at a certain time. And if he wasn't there and the garage was, she might have seen a curtain twitch. I think she was stalking him all the time. She probably had all sorts of clues about his routine. You know? So that's what I think. What else could it be? She did not want to find the body. And even if she did, it doesn't seem like she would have known that it was supposed to, that it would happen at the house. Because why would they want it to happen at the house? I mean, if you're going to say do it at the house, even in the Dahlia Dippolito case, you remember that case, guys, with the Dahlia Dippolito when she was hiring the hitman and to kill her husband, but the hitman was a cop and she was caught on video ordering the hit, paying money, and the hitman was like, "Are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure? Because there's no turning back." It was so funny. The guy was just like the bump. All these FBI gangster undercovers are the same. Your husband up in Broward. Are you sure you want to go through with this? She was 5,000% sure. And the guy told her roughly what he was going to do. He says, "Listen, you're going to go to the gym at early, 5:30 a.m. You're going to the gym. I'll be in and out the house before 7 o'clock. I'll take a few things, make it look like a robbery. I'll break a window." it's fairly common knowledge that if you're going to kill someone in their house, the best thing to do is to at least make it look like a robbery, right? If you're covering up what is a targeted attack. Because if you just go in and shoot them and walk out like Sigfredo did, it looks like a targeted attack. And that narrows the pool of suspects down to you and your co-conspirators, Wendi. So I don't know that they said to the hitman, don't do it in the house. But I'd say it's almost definitely certain positive that they didn't say, do it in the house. We want it done in the house. That didn't happen, because why would it happen? So why would Wendi be thinking that it was at the house? She wanted to see if he'd made it home to the house. If he's made it home, he's not been killed yet, right? I think that's what she was doing. If anyone disagrees with me, let's find an emoji to say a disagreement. All right, put a green love heart if you disagree, and we'll come back to you for questions.
Alleged first extortion effort. He says no problem at that time. This is between the first and second trips. She's asking to be on the payroll. So the explanation from defendant about why she's on the payroll does not fit with the other evidence in this case. So we've got all this evidence that points to the defendant.
Absolutely, Lego person. They had no communication with Garcia whatsoever. Anyone who thinks that is either stupid or lying. Okay? Which brings us back to our fantastic merch. Share the merch.
Defendant. The motive points to him. When we follow the money, it leads to him. The Prius eventually leads back to him through these conspirators. And each time we have a big event in this case, we see these call flurries where all the parties are calling each other in that structure that I talked about. It goes from this one to this one to this one. But as the defense points out, these folks had independent relationships with each other that could explain those communication patterns. So without knowing the content, how could we know if they're really talking about the murder or if these call flurries around these key events are just a coincidence? A conspiracy can be shaped like a cluster with everybody talking to everybody. It can be shaped like a wheel with one central hub talking to all the different spokes. Or it can be shaped like a train car, which is what we have here, where one person talks to only the car in front of them and the car behind them. Law enforcement was asking these same questions. How is this conspiracy shaped? How does it work? How does information flow through it? What are different parties' relative roles within a conspiracy? And the wiretap and bump were designed to answer those questions. Did you notice that Donna Adelson, see how the paper's folded in half? She didn't even look at the paper before she put it in her purse. She didn't think this was a process server. She knew exactly what it was the moment this man approached. And then she just goes about her business. Does she give law enforcement this valuable information that could be used to...
Lego person, there's too many witnesses at the gym or at the daycare or in a busy area, but there's long winding roads leading around Trescott and those Benton Hills, There's plenty of places. And a residential street, I think they got very lucky. Okay, it's the middle of the day, but Jim Geiger was next door. He was a witness. There were witnesses there. I think they got very lucky that there was no one on the street when he was shot at the house. It's a major residential neighborhood. So I think somewhere that wasn't the gym and wasn't a residential neighborhood, but between the two would have been a much better place to do the hit. You could have found a quiet spot.
To solve the brutal murder of her son-in-law? I mean, this guy that approached her obviously knows something about who killed Dan Markell, right? So surely she went straight to the cops. Nope. Instead, she goes straight to this defendant, who goes straight to Catherine de Panama, who goes straight to Sigfredo Garcia. In that first call after the bump, Donna says she doesn't want to talk on the phone, but defendant can't leave it alone. He asks, does it involve me or other people? Her answer, well, probably the both of us. Probably both of us. He says, what's that? Probably the two of us. So you probably have a general idea what I'm talking about. He doesn't say, no, I have no general idea what you're talking about. He says, all right. He absolutely does have a general idea what.
Look at this. You know, you think she wanted to find the body? Are we really going to go down that road, Grimley? I mean, I don't know if I can be bothered to argue this. It's like, just move on, man. That's been debunked. Do we really have to go over this again?
She's talking about, and if they were innocent, as the defendant has claimed, and this was in fact a second extortion attempt, there is not a reason in the world why they wouldn't just say that. I got approached by another one. One came and paid me a visit today. It's happening again. In call B.
Please tell me, what's this guy's name? Grimly. Yeah, grim conversation. Please tell me, what is the net advantage to Wendi finding the body in your mind? Why would she want to do that? How would that advance her cause?
The defendant asked Donna to take a picture of the bump letter and send it to him, and she refuses. Why? Are the Latin Kings going to see the text? Do you think someone is trying to blackmail you? Maybe. Could be.
Hello, Michelle DeMatteis.
I don't know. No. That's crazy. That's his response. And I'm not adding the emphasis on that syllable. He says it like.
I love that. George is using a little bit of poetry techniques. I'm not adding the emphasis on that syllable. Oh, she's crazy. I'm not adding the emphasis on that syllable.
Like that. That's crazy. How is it crazy? You're already being extorted by Latin King members. Remember, Doctor?
And how would it rule her out, Grimly, as okay, so you think that, okay, so she finds the body, calls the police, and the police come and she's garnered with sympathy. Oh, it must have been so terrible finding the body. Let's get you a warm blanket and a hot glass of milk. And it would rule out her direct involvement. Well, surely not as much as her being verifiably by cell tower information nowhere near that part of town. You know, it would rule out her direct involvement. How is that?
Because he hadn't come up with that part yet. In call C, defendant calls back again to tell Donna not to talk about things in the apartment or any place. Why? Why? The Latin Kings aren't in there. And she doesn't ask why, because it's obvious. She says, oh, obviously. Why? Because they might be under surveillance? Well, who cares if they have nothing to hide? Here we see the first use of code on the wire. People don't talk in code if they've done.
Exactly, Paul. Paul M says, why go to the bother of setting up an alibi, then discover the body? It doesn't make any sense. I don't know what this guy is talking about. I don't know why we're talking about it. It's just yeah, I'm done with it. I'm done with it.
Nothing wrong. People do not talk in code if they haven't done anything wrong. Defendant knows. I mean, he knows that fact, and that's why he told you we didn't talk in code on the wire.
It would be a much closer microscope, Amy. It would be so much more of a different interview. She would have been immediately in cuffs, at least until they know what the fuck is going on. You know, she's had a very highly contentious, well-documented, crazy divorce. She does not want to be under any microscope. She's accepted that she'll be under some microscope because she's the ex-wife. There's no way, if you want to kill your ex-husband, that part you've got to accept. But any more magnification under the a different microscope, closer microscope, avoid that at all costs. Don't go and find the body. You know, it's not part of the plan. If you want to make that puzzle piece fit, you just keep trying to hammer that piece. You keep trying to hammer that piece, but you can't hammer that piece. That piece doesn't fit.
We spoke carefully. What does that mean? Careful of what?
Oh, Michelle, I'm so glad. I'm really good at this, apparently. Pronouncing people's names on True Crime Metrix. It was a bit of a lucky guess. What do people call you? Matthew? I don't know. Yeah, good. I'm really chuffed with that. Thank you, Michelle.
Defendant also told you under oath that he regrets that his mom randomly used the word TV in this call as part of her careful talk. The defendant got Wendi Adelson a TV as a divorce present as a cheaper alternative to hiring a hitman. Dan Markell was killed by a hit.
Yeah, Evan, this is exactly what I'm saying. Sorry to interrupt so much, guys, but we're in a deep conversation here, and that's fantastic. But skipping ahead, Grimly, gloves. If she can get rid of a gun, she can get rid of gloves. Evan Elizabeth Duke says, Metrix, Wendi probably didn't think he would be there. Exactly. I think she was hoping that she would drive past Trescott where a murder didn't take place, and that seeing either an empty garage, okay, maybe he would close the garage. I don't know if he did that like religiously or not. I don't think there was much in the garage like that you'd need to protect from stealing. Can't remember the pictures offhand, but I think it was pretty empty. So there's a good shot that you just leave it open, right? Maybe not. I don't know that. But say he did, and say she could drive past the house and see an empty garage when his normal schedule, whatever, would suggest that he would have been home by that time. That would have given her some indication. Like, okay, show's on. He's been shot, and now at some point later today, the cops are going to be coming to see me. And that's the other thing, you know, the dinner at Mosaic, the lunch at Mosaic, she didn't know for certain that the cops were going to find her there. I really want to know what she had planned after that. It could have taken the cops 2, 3, 4 hours to locate her. She wouldn't have known that Isom would have tracked her down at Mosaic. How would she know that? You know? I mean, maybe if she'd left a note with her secretary to say that she would be at Mosaic from 1 till 2 or whatever it was, and she would predict that the cops would phone her secretary, ask where she was. Oh, let me check her calendar. She's at Mosaic from 1 until 2. Possibly she could have made some assumption that they would find her, but she still wouldn't have known for sure, right? So what was the rest of her day planned to be? That's what I'd like to know. What was she doing after Mosaic? Yeah, Grimly, I think you're instead of looking at the picture as a whole, you're insisting on dying on this hill, and for what? You know, gunpowder residue. Well, yeah, okay, gunpowder residue.
Hitman. Then the same TV is Wendy's alibi for the murder, a service appointment that her mother set up for her from South Florida. And then on the wire, Donna says,
oh, sorry to stop again, but Wendy Fletcher's got a great comment here. The hitmen were amateurs and on drugs and drinking. They did not have a sober plan and were lucky they did not shoot each other. Right? Yeah, pretty much. You know, they almost did. I mean, they shot the friggin' Prius through the gas line. You know, could that have gone any worse?
quote, "This TV is going to cost about $5." Does the defendant say, "What TV? What are you talking about?" Since you inserted a random object into this careful talk conversation? No, he doesn't need to ask what TV, because he knows exactly what she's talking about, and he parrots it back. They asked you for $5,000. The defendant has advised you that this TV stuff is a coincidence. Is it a coincidence, or is it obvious they're referring to their conspiracy and this murder? Only you can decide which explanation is credible. The players in this case are smart. They've given a lot of thought to their preparations before this and to their explanations after. We know the seed was planted in early 2013, and it took over 1 year to come to fruition. And they've really thought of almost everything. A clever TV-related alibi for Wendi, a frame job for Lacasse, and they insulated themselves by hiring Catherine McDaniel as a middleman, walling themselves off like those train cars, only communicating with the one in front and the one behind, and having no connection to the one further down the line. It's also important to note that in these first few calls, A, B, and C, that Donna Adelson describes the bump to the defendant, and she says the person that approached her mentioned an ex-girlfriend. But she does not say the name Katie or Catherine. Then, with only this very limited information, defendant calls only one of his many ex-girlfriends, Catherine McDaniel. In call D, defendant tells McDaniel that he thinks that this undercover, the would-be extortionist, said her name. We know this is true. The undercover did.
Cassandra Perez says, I think Dan wanting to take the kids swimming in the afternoon through a kink in the plan. Wendi freaked out, needed to make sure the job was done in the morning. She couldn't help herself. Well, that's interesting. It's interesting. You know, because I do believe that the job was supposed to be done, you know, soon after he got out of Premiere, right? That's when they wanted it done, but these hitmen had already fucked it up once before. They couldn't find him and blah, 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 blah. So if they'd stalled and couldn't do it until later, and then the boys would have been with him. Interesting. Yeah, I really see your point on that, Cassandra. And then she freaked out and wanted to make sure it had been done. Yes. Yes. Thanks for bringing that to us, Cassandra.
Did say Katie, but Donna had not yet told the defendant that. They only communicated in calls A, B, and C. And the only communication on those calls was that the person mentioned ex-girlfriend. On the wire, the defendant says he just called Katie.
Hey, many thanks to A. Johnson for buying us 3 cups of coffee on buymeacoffee.com. Thank you, AJ. And yeah, if anyone else would like to support the channel, guys, we've got a link to buymeacoffee.com in the description for the video. Thank you so much, guys.
Catherine McDaniel because she was his most recent ex-girlfriend. Well, we know that's not true because there's at least one woman that defendant will admit meets that definition between Magbanua and the thump, and that's Whitney Kick. On the stand, he told you all that all the you might not be the right Katie conversation. There's several mentions of that. Yo, I'm not sure you're the right Katie. I apologize. I'll feel stupid if you're not the right Katie. That was designed to reassure her that he was not setting her up. Once defendant meets with his mother and gets the details and the paper with the undercover's phone number, he meets up with Catherine Magbanua at Dolce Vita. If they had any evidence, we'd have already gone to the airport. Does that sound like an innocent man? Even if they bug your phone, you're still not talking about any of this. Talking about what? The cops would only bug your phone to get information about the murder. And if you
Listen, Grimley, I don't want to get into a pissing contest here. Essentially, we are all on the same side, okay? But you know, yesterday we had some person really pushing hard to argue the point that there was a special code set up dependent on Wendy's use of her charge card, right? Whether she would use the charge card at the gas station or the liquor store would be sent as a signal that Donna would receive in Miami because she was logged in to Wendy's online banking and would be able to refresh and see, there was a charge at the gas station, or there was a charge at the liquor store. And that would be an agreed code to say, well, if it was the gas station, that means the hit's done. For example, it doesn't really matter what it was communicating, but one meant one thing, one meant another thing, right? And that's a load of bullshit. That's just creating a fantasy story that's very high tech, and it is kind of an interesting idea for a movie plot, right? This story doesn't need further embellishment. It's interesting enough. Now, your case of Wendi wanting to find the body. I don't know how that makes her look more innocent. I don't know how that creates sympathy for her. All it does in my mind is create more suspicion, right? Cuffs would have been on her immediately. The level of scrutiny that she would have received as a result of being at the fucking scene would have been a totally different level. Now, on the other hand, we know that Wendi likes to name drop the professions of everybody she encounters. I have a friend who's on the board at FSU. He's a senator. He's writing a book. He's a vet. He's a doctor. He's a lawyer. They've got their own firm, you know, blah, blah, blah. She does that constantly, right? She was at lunch with other, you know, highly educated professional people, women. That fits Wendy's modus operandi to use that as her camouflage. Look at the people that I'm associated with. Look at the people that I'm having lunch with. You know, she displays the profession, her own education, and that of her friends and colleagues very much to present as a respectable member of society that wouldn't be involved in a murder plot, right? You're telling me that she's going to book that lunch and not go to it so she can go and find the body? I mean, think about what you're saying. Which one makes her look more innocent? You know, if you insist, after this explanation, I've taken several minutes to try and explain to you as best as I can. I mean, if you just insist on trying to make your version fit, then what are we having a discussion for? You know, if you can't see which one has the net benefit and the net risk to Wendi out of those two options, and we know which one actually happened, why are you trying to make this version of her finding the body fit? Why are you working so hard when we've already found the answer? You know, here's the answer. We're showing it to you right now, and I'm trying to do it in a friendly way. You know, we're all on the same team here, but there's enough to this story. We don't need to recreate a work of fiction here. She wanted to find the body. Yeah, okay. If you want to stick by that, stick by that. But I'm moving on, and we're just going to be moving through the prosecution statement now. Okay, so I hope that helped you.
You don't have any, then there's nothing to not talk about. The cops aren't going to be doing a wiretap to investigate him getting extorted, which he hasn't even reported to law enforcement. So
just briefly, yes, I accept she's got a fucked up, twisted personality, but she's cunning. And ultimately, she does what's right for her and only her. Right? And that doesn't include putting herself in the crosshairs of the investigation any more than she needs to. Like if she were to go and find the body and be the only one there. I mean, that's just easy, right? You don't want to be the one with the dead body and no other witness. I mean, you know, that's exactly what you don't want to happen if you're involved in a murder plot. Anyway, thank you for that. It was interesting talking about that. We're moving on.
not talk about what? Defendant discusses how he's going to start arming himself and is prepared to shoot. He told you under oath from the stand that he was being threatened and extorted by gang members for 2 years at the time that this recording was made. And now he's just starting to think about carrying a gun? Does this sound like a man that's been living in fear for 2 years? Does this sound like a guy who...
Yeah, everyone should join Discord. There's a link into this the description, or Amy's just put one in the chat there. It's fantastic. It's free. It's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. And it's a fantastic place to be online with all of us in this community when the streams aren't running. And there's more conversations and lots of exchanges, media exchanges going on over there. And it's just a great way to stay in touch with all of the great people at True Crime Metrix.
lays down and takes his lumps without question when threatened. Someone comes up to me asking for money in my house. He says that. Lines 23 and 24 on the top there. He says this as if it's a preposterous proposition that somebody would just walk into his house and demand money. But isn't that what happened to you? How is that preposterous? But wait, what changed? On the next page, he says, yeah, and guess what? When the fucking police show up and there's a doctor, there's an oral surgeon standing there with a dead gang member in his fucking driveway, they're not gonna come down too hard on me. This is the same man who took the witness stand and swore under oath that he was a victim in this case, and that he had been too paralyzed by fear of gang members to come forward and report his victimization. Dr. Adelson on this recording is the real Dr. Adelson. On the stand, he was so controlled, so knowledgeable about his case, so practiced. But there is no way to explain away his statements on this recording. When the bump happens, you get to observe this defendant in action in his role as fixer or problem solver. He's working those phones, trying to get Katie to investigate the bump and find out if it's legitimate or not, and also trying to reassure Donna that it's just the cops fishing and it's nothing to worry about. The bump is an actual recorded example of how this defendant acts when he is threatened by a purported extortionist. And how he acts is the complete opposite of how he's telling y'all he acted in the first extortion. Number one, he does not stay quiet about the bump. He talks about it a lot. There are multiple calls with Donna and Katie discussing the bump and what the next step should be. Two, he takes action. There are multiple in-person meetings with his mom and with Katie and eventually with his dad too about the bump and what to do about it. Three, he investigates the bump. He asks questions. He enlists Magbanoa to find out who this is. He talks a lot about his concerns that this will not be just a one-time payment, but could turn into some ongoing problem. And four, he doesn't take it lying down. He threatens Nazi shit if these people think they can threaten his family and get away with it. He suggests that the problem might require an additional murder. Quote, if he can't do it, I'll find someone else that can. Number five, he's suspicious. He does not blindly accept the representations of this purported blackmailer that approached his mother. It's clear from the Dolce meeting that he doesn't fully trust Katie. He certainly doesn't trust this purported blackmailer that bumped into his mom. The person that represented themselves, the person that approached his mom represented himself as a Latin King gang member, right? I'm a brother of this guy that I met in Broward or whatever.
Georgia, the line is, I was with Taco up in Broward, and he told me everything, man. This family problem. We helped you with your family problem up north. Do the right thing, man. Take care of Taco like you've been taking care of Katie and Tudor, man.
And he's demanding money from her. Yet, the defendant does not take his word for it that he's a gang member. He's not so in fear for his mother's life that he opens the safe and gets $5,000 more out and gives it to Katie. A pittance compared to the amount he's telling you he handed out to the first layer of extortion. Number six, he doesn't pay. He doesn't bring the $5,000 to Dolce and give it to Katie and say, go pay it. Because that's what I do when I'm threatened, I pay. He doesn't pay, he doesn't ever pay. And it's only $5,000. Instead, he analyzes and thinks through and talks about every possible scenario. Defendant says it's one of two things or one of two scenarios. One being the cops, two being someone actually trying to blackmail his family about this murder. According to him now, he's been blackmailed for 2 years. And he's talking to Catherine Magbanoa. He's talking to the person that's been collecting his money all those months. But at no point does he acknowledge the first extortion in the Dolce Vita meeting. Why not? Oh, because she asked me not to talk about it. Well, times have changed. There's a second extortion effort now, and they're approaching my mother. You think I'm not going to mention the first extortion? Your people have been running their mouths, and now they've tracked down my mother. You need to go get this under control. Nothing like that.
No, Katie told me that we were to never speak of this again. I wanted her to let I wanted to let her know that I wasn't setting her up. What?
Next in the Dolce recording, defendant begins to explain how to prove a crime the police.
Imagine being Charlie Adelson, listening to Georgia lay this down, knowing that with every word it's just another fucking nail in your coffin, in your bolsterwood nothing coffin, your plain pine box that is the only way you're going to leave jail, and probably before your time, because someone's going to get you.
Have to put the person at the scene, not just in the car. He's reassuring her that even if we, law enforcement, can tie her or the shooters to the Prius, that we'll never be able to charge them. Because they didn't come to Tallahassee, they didn't shoot anyone, they didn't do anything wrong, and therefore they can't be held accountable. But that is not the law as the judge has instructed you. Everyone who wanted this done and did some act toward accomplishing it is guilty as the one that pulled the trigger. He's also telling her that even if Rivera has run his mouth to this would-be extortionist, his word alone that, hey, if he goes to the cops and starts singing and says, hey, Rivera told me he did this murder, that's not going to be enough. Basically, he didn't use the word hearsay, but that's not going to be enough to proceed on an arrest in this case. This person knows information. So Katie, they'll be back. Whoever it is knows information. Information about what? You had nothing to do with it. Remember that, doctor? You've been extorted and that hasn't been reported. What information do they have? You mean information that could be used to solve the murder of your former brother-in-law? If so, why wouldn't you want those people to go to the cops? Why wouldn't you want them to come forward with that information? Then the guilty parties will be held accountable.
I agree, Albert. When Charlie Adelson is buried in a prison cemetery, we should at least paint his coffin silver pine mica. You know, just in honor of the case and everything that went down.
Your extortionists will be jailed without you having to do or risk anything. Next, defendant talks about what will happen if the would-be extortionist, the undercover, is picked up by law enforcement. Next thing you know, this person is singing. Other people start singing. As soon as they have him, he starts calling your name out, and then there's going to be police at your door.
Paul M. says, surprised the jury took as long as they did to convict, even with a nice lunch. Paul M., the only reason they took a long time is because they spent more time looking at the menu, the lunch menu, than they did deliberating. You know, they were deliberating whether to have the chicken or fish.
And at my door. If you're innocent of this murder, why are you worried about the extortions telling law enforcement whatever it is he knows about the murder of Dan Markell? Defendant says he wants to pay the money. Oh, got ahead of myself. He wants to pay the money, but he's explaining to her the problem with paying is that people might keep coming back or tell their friends who will jump on board as well. He's explaining to her the problems with paying a potential extortionist. What he doesn't say, which is what you would expect if he'd been getting extorted for 2 years, is Garcia or whoever you've been giving my money to has obviously been running their mouths and now they are messing with my mother. Next, he gives instructions. Say my friends have no idea what you're talking about. And frankly, I don't know what you're talking about, but the name sounds familiar of who's incarcerated. So I'm going to give you something as charity to help the less fortunate. But do not contact these people again or they're going to the police. The whole time you're talking, just say, I don't know what's going on. Only use the words help and charity. This isn't the guy described in this first extortion who just rolled over when threatened. He's in control. He's giving the orders. He's giving instructions. Why would you have to give instructions to a blackmailer about how to handle a blackmailer? Next, the defendant says, now he's fucking with his wife and he's fucking with him, and you fuck with the king himself, you better kill him because he's going to be a big problem. And he knows who you are. If he can't do it, I'll have someone else do it. Defendant testified that this means the only way to stop Garcia is to kill him. He's not talking about killing him. He's just saying he's a really bad dude, and that's the only way to kill him. The evidence shows that he's saying if Garcia can't handle the undercover, he'll get somebody else to do it. Then he says, and so help me God.
Michelle, I think he's already in Leon County. I'm not sure.
They fuck with my family, it's gonna be fucking Nazi shit because this will be done. I mean, Katie, I don't care what I spend, okay? I swear to God. Defendant and I went back and forth on the stand about what Nazi shit might include, and I think we ultimately agreed that that would be killing. And then he says, I don't care what I have to spend. If you're struggling to figure out who this man is, that's a good clue right there. He's going to buy a solution to this problem exactly how he.
Michelle, yeah, I mean, what a couple of months we've got lined up, huh? 2 very long anticipated trials that we've been following for years. Donna Adelson, huge. Sarah Boone, huge. And that takes us up all the way until November, pretty much. What a gift. You know, and it's all going to be live right here on True Crime Metrix. So everybody subscribe to the channel and come and join us for the live. You know, we're just going to watch it together, right? We're going to have a great time. It's going to be fantastic, guys. Subscribe to the channel.
Pay for a solution to the problem of Danny Markel. Here he wants to know if Garcia has any bad feelings toward him, meaning, is Garcia willing to look into this and handle this for me? Or does he still hate me because I used to date you? If defendant had really been getting extorted all along, surely he'd say something like, I've been paying all this money, I've been compliant with everything. Can you get him to look into this and figure this out? Katie, I'll go to the moon and back for you. Why? Because she did something big for him, and he's going to be indebted to her for the rest of his life. Not because he feels sorry for her, not because she's his protector. He's the protector. He'll go to the moon and back for her because they're neck deep in this conspiracy together. Somebody messes with her, they mess with him. Somebody messes with him, they're messing with her. It's the same thing.
Michelle, jury selection starts a week from tomorrow, Wednesday the 16th, and they could be wrapped up with jury selection by Thursday afternoon. If they do, opening statements will be on Thursday late afternoon. I think Judge Everett even said that if jury selection goes until the end of the day on Thursday, they will do opening statements on Friday before breaking for the weekend and then continuing with the trial on Monday. I mean, personally, I don't know how I feel about that. I don't think you should do opening statements and then break for the weekend. That gets the whole thing going, you know? You want to get straight into the witness testimonies and stuff, you know, and the evidence. But I guess I'll take it.
Here he's demonstrating an understanding of, a rational understanding of how blackmail works. His example is that you could blackmail someone that's cheating on their wife, meaning you blackmail someone that you have dirt on. You don't go kill somebody and then go up to an innocent person and say, I killed your brother-in-law, give me money. At the end of the conversation, defendant says, you know who this is coming from?
Right, Tuesday the 17th. Got, yeah. Foggy on the dates, guys.
Inside. And then I don't have a slide for this, but he goes on to talk about what he will do for her. I don't have to sit here and tell you what I would do. I show you what I could do. You know what I'm saying? You know how I am. I look for things to do. You don't ask me for shit. Didn't she ask you for $138,000 and then a payment plan and then another $195,000? You don't ask me for shit. I look for things to do for you.
Annie with the tacos. Do you know who Taco is?
Is that a statement that would be made to his blackmailer, or at least the woman that's taking the money to the blackmailers? These are just a selection of the incriminating quotes on this Dolce Vita recording, and I know it's a struggle to listen to it. You will have the recording, not the transcripts, but you'll have all the audios. The transcripts are just demonstratives, they don't go back. But you can kind of hunker down and listen as much as you can to get what you can out of that Dolce recording, because it is full of gems, and you can probably think of 10 more arguments than the ones I've just tortured you with today. In the initial recordings, the defendant and Magbanua seem to be kind of dancing around the issue, right? Nobody ever speaks directly. He can't know for sure at this point that she's not involved in the extortion effort or possibly wearing a wire, and she can't know for sure that he's not wearing a wire. So they're both just feeling each other out in the first several interactions after the bump. But those are the best stuff before they start to figure out, okay, we really think this is law enforcement. After the meeting with Magbanua, defendant calls Donna and tells her he had coffee with a friend and gave her some good relationship advice. Now remember, he's not talking in code. He assures Donna repeatedly that it's being handled and there's nothing to worry about. Then we hear in call H, the call where Magbanua calls Garcia and he's really angry. And she needs him to call that number to figure out who this is and to deal with it. Ultimately, Garcia says he will take care of the problem. The less she knows, the better. And then he tells her to stop talking about it on the phone and hangs up. Then we go to this. Oh, that's that. Then we've got the real struggle over the phone number. The point of this is that this number was handed to Donna. The number goes from Donna to Charlie, to Katie, and now to Garcia. Here in call J, we hear the reference to investment as code for the $5,000 extortion payment. A good investment would be someone who really does know something, not somebody that's just fishing, and will agree that 5,000 is going to handle it. You're going to go away, you're going to be silent about whatever you know, 5,000 is going to do it. A bad investment would be someone who's just read the papers and decided, hey, I'm going to try this, a law enforcement officer, or somebody that's going to take 5,000 and just keep coming back for more and more and more and more, and be a continuous problem. This is a composite slide of all the places in the recordings that are in evidence where the parties express concerns about the details that the undercover had. It's getting too detailed. He's coming up with a lot of fucking details, etc. It's obvious they're analyzing the legitimacy of the undercover and assessing how much of a threat he is based on the quantity and the quality of the details that he has about the killing of Dan Markel. Then you've got more property and listing, code talk, more concern that the blackmailer might try to increase the amount. Here's a composite slide illustrating all the different calls where the defendant expresses concern that if he pays, that might not be the end of it. And the reason why I think this is so important is because you've been paying for 2 years. Why are you analyzing how blackmail goes or might go so much? You're supposedly an expert in it. Here, defendant gets stern with Cappleman, telling her to find out who the F it is and stop playing their games. Again, for a guy that's living in mortal fear of Latin King gang members, he's pretty confident. He's pretty in control. Recall that in this one call, she basically says, I can't, she's really furious in this call. And she's like, I can't do all this code anymore. I can't talk in code. Remember, defendant told you he didn't talk in code on the wire. So she breaks character here in this call, BB. Then defendant later says to her, the quote I already gave you about how they're in this together. They're one and the same. And I couldn't agree more with that statement. This slide is a composite of all the places where defendant says if he had information about the murder, he would collect the reward money. First of all, whichever side of this case, whichever theory you're finding credible, both sides agree that the defendant knew the whole time who killed Dan Markel, or close to the whole time. So definitely could have gone and gotten the reward money, although it's hard to imagine he would collect reward money for information about the death of his own loved one. Defendant claims he doesn't go to the police, period. And he offers an example of I had a jet ski stolen and I didn't go to the police. Well, maybe the insurance was worth more than the trouble with the cops. I don't know. But he has gone to the police before. There was evidence of that. And the evidence shows that when somebody messes with him, he comes at them with everything he has. On the lawsuit with Ryan Fitzpatrick, the incident with his child's mother.
Georgia, when his girlfriend doesn't want to come over for Maine Lobsters to work out and watch the basketball game, he comes at them with everything he has. Which isn't much, which is just this sort of spoilt child bullying a woman who doesn't know any better. You're not making me want to be with you. You're not making no. You're either stupid or you're lying. Charlie is a dick. We get it. We get it.
Incident with an old roommate, incident with a former female employee. Some of those included reports to law enforcement. Some of them.
If you're going to be a bitch, just don't come over, okay? You sit there, you do your hair, you do your nails, and you bitch and moan. You bitch and moan. What a guy. Yeah. And June's poor sweet innocent June, who doesn't know much better, is sat in that frickin' FBI interview and going, oh, he was like my perfect guy. Apart from the murder and the cheating, he was my perfect guy. And all of the, abusive behavior.
Included use of other resources. In the last case with the female employee, he sent a letter that said, he accused her of trying to shake him down. So she's trying to extort him. And it states that he would never pay her a dime. In fact, I'm going to get attorney's fees. He's a guy with considerable resources, and he's not a shrinking violet. He is not afraid to use those resources to his advantage. If some street thug was trying to push him around, do you think he'd lay down and take that without doing one thing about it? This slide is a composite of some of the occasions defendant mentions the option of going to the police. And these quotes are specifically in reference to him saying, if you're threatened, you go to the police. If you're threatened, you go to the police. And he has done that before, but he did not go to the police in this case. He didn't go to the police in 2014, not out of fear, as he would have you believe, but because he did this crime. He believed he had gotten away with this crime. He didn't go in 2015 because he was busy that year having the best year of his life. Financially, got in a serious relationship with a new girl, June Mchinda, cruised the intercoastal in his boat. This dude had solved the problem. Everyone was happy. Wendi and the boys were back in South Florida where they belonged. Mom was happy. He was making money hand over fist. June described the beginning of their relationship. June Umchinda described the beginning of her relationship with this defendant in October of 15 as a fairy tale. He is not sweating anything, folks. And that continued until the time of the bump in this case in April 2016, whereby the defendant became agitated, angry, and anxious. This was before the report concerning him was leaked. At the time of the bump, his behavior changed noticeably. June noticed it, and Ryan Fitzpatrick noticed it as well. He was erratic. Now, why on earth would he be more stressed out after his extortionists were arrested? He seemed perfectly fine to these witnesses when he would have you believe he was in fear for his life. And then he further told you that he was more nervous after the arrest because he feared he'd be falsely arrested. Why? You didn't do anything wrong, you're not going to get arrested. Now, yeah, after the report gets leaked, or were you a hot mess because you knew that we were getting closer? Here's Captain Magdanoff and the defendant discussing if the undercover could be someone who's trying to be an informant. An informant for what, if not the death of Dan Markell? He's not going to be an informant on the defendant getting extorted, a crime he has not reported. Here they're talking about whether the undercover is getting his information from the inside or the outside. Inside meaning someone within the murder conspiracy, someone on that board, or the outside, somebody that one of those people told. Magdanoff says it can only be one of two, apparently. If somebody's that desperate, not from the inside, because there's too much from the inside that the person knows from the outside, so they won't risk it. That's why I know for a fact it's not from the inside.
They won't risk it. It's going to be Nazi shit. No. Luis Rivera, the head of the Latin Kings behind bars, means absolutely nothing. If you think he can't send someone from the outside, you're wrong. You're wrong. These are highly connected people.
And Adelson says, it's somebody not from the first layer, but probably the second layer. Yeah, and they just made a big mistake, she says.
I love it when Katie gets tough. You know, it's when Katie gets tough, it's like, okay, you want to look tough. It's like she's just, it's like she's in a school play most of the time, Katie. She's never come out of high school.
The wire goes on and the defendant proceeds to continue to analyze the additional bump efforts that law enforcement makes, that text message, the letter, the call to the Adelson Institute. He becomes increasingly confident that this would-be extortionist is an undercover agent. And then after listening...
He's an insane dick twat to women. I mean, just think about that line. I don't know which line is more insulting and whatever you want to call it, you know. The line where as a threat to her not doing what he wants, which is for her to come over and have Maine lobsters, work out with him and watch the basketball game. The threat is, oh, look, June, you're not making me want to be with you. And you really should be making me want to be with you because you don't want to lose this, June. This is worth a lot. Do you know how many women would kill for this? You know? Oh my God.
Listening to Donna's call to the undercover.
And it's like, what is that thing? I can't remember. I'll paraphrase where it's like, no, you kissed me goodbye at the airport and told me you loved me and said it would be okay if I cheat. You said it would be okay if I cheat, June.
He is completely sure of that. And you have never seen anybody so elated to be under investigation by the FBI for first-degree murder. Consider this in light of defendant's assertions that he was acting strangely after the bump because he was worried about being falsely arrested. To the contrary, he doesn't seem worried at all. He seems thrilled. I think he says it's fantastic in one of these calls. I want to turn briefly to your jury instructions. The defendant is charged with conspiracy to commit murder, solicitation to commit murder, and first-degree murder. Why all three? Because the defendant didn't just ask Catherine Magdalena to do this and promise her money. He didn't just set a plan of action in place toward doing it. It got done. It got done, and that's what makes it a murder. That's just conspiring. You didn't just conspire. It got done. This is the difference between just soliciting or just conspiring and being a principal to first-degree murder. To prove the crime of first-degree murder, I must prove to you that this was premeditated. Premeditation is defined as killing after consciously intending to do so. This murder, consciously deciding to do so. All right, so this murder was in the works for over a year. It began with the failed relocation efforts. When defendant first looked into hiring a hitman, it took root when he enlisted Catherine Magdalena, and she thereby brought in Garcia and Rivera to do the killing. The planning that went into the killing was extensive, spanning over a year, and it included the solicitation of Magdalena to find someone to do the murder, the preparation of that letter and that envelope that were placed in Catherine Magdalena's diaper bag, free of DNA or prints containing the directions for a murder that was delivered to the hired gun, Secreto Garcia. 3, the payments that were made in advance for renting the vehicles in the hotel room, the expenses associated with those trips. That was part of the planning. 4, the scouting and stalking of Professor Markel that we learned went on in both trips. And 5, the pressure that defendant applied to Catherine Magdalena after that first attempt failed. Get it done, get it done, get it done. 6, of course, is the payment itself. He paid for it. All the planning, all the meetings, all the precautions were coming to fruition when that hired gun fired those 2 shots that devastated so many lives on July 18th, 2014. When you think about how this case was proven, we started at a single point, the crime scene, and we went in 2 totally different directions. We chased the Prius, and we chased the motive, the bad blood of the in-laws. And the investigation could have stalled if either of these leads had resulted in a dead end. But all the little breadcrumbs led to the same place. The Prius led to Garcia and Rivera, which led to Magdalena. The bad blood and the divorce led to the Adelson family. The wire confirmed the defendant's specific involvement, not just some Adelson, that Adelson. Then Rivera and eventually Magdalena confirmed his involvement as well. I want to spend a moment talking about the principal instruction. We talked about this in jury selection. The defendant didn't pull the trigger, but that doesn't mean he isn't just as responsible as the person who did. Without every player in this conspiracy, the murder doesn't get done. In your jury instructions, it says there are 2 ways to prove defendant's guilt under the law of principles. If he intended that the murder be done and he did some act, preparing the paper, procuring Magdalena, or said some word, get it done, get it done, get it done, that caused or helped another to commit the crime, then he is guilty of first-degree murder. Or, 2 ways you can find it. Or, if he intended the murder to be done, and he made or promised payment in exchange for the murder, and the crime was committed by another person, he's guilty of first-degree murder. My burden today is to prove to you this case beyond a reasonable doubt. The jury instructions tell you that a reasonable doubt is not a mere possible doubt, a speculative, imaginary, or forced doubt. So when you're stuck back there deliberating, ask yourself, what is reasonable? When you're weighing a piece of...
The jury are already ordering lunch in their mind, Georgia. They're just feeling really depressed right now because they've still got to listen to Dan Rashburn for 2 hours. You know, they already have the answers. They're sold. Guilty, guilty, guilty. 12 guilties.
Of evidence and deciding, like, is this
It's just back to the chicken or fish. We still don't know. Which one comes with potatoes? Well, can I switch the potatoes for French fries? Okay, then what about a side salad? Would it be too much trouble to order a niçoise?
Is it out or not? Is it reasonable? Does it fit with the other evidence in the case? If you find yourself saying, what if, or a fellow juror is saying, what if, without evidence to support whatever it is that comes after the what if, that's speculation. Remind your fellow jurors to get back on track. And that cannot be a reasonable doubt if it's speculation. My burden is to prove the elements of the listed offenses. Nothing more. If you have a question that I have failed to prove the answer to, but it's not one of these elements of the crime that the judge has given you, that is not a reasonable doubt. I'm concerned that you'll get back there and think, well, he didn't pull the trigger, so let's just do conspiracy and solicitation. You guys have worked too hard to render a compromised verdict at this point. I trust that each of you will follow the law and your oath to render a wise and legal verdict in this case. This defendant is guilty.
I would definitely take on that opportunity, Amy. That would be a dream come true. No prep. Just give me the floor, Georgia. She's mine. Yeah. Do Metrix doing Wendy's closing argument. That would be fantastic. Okay, I would prepare.
Guilty of first-degree murder under the principal theory, if ever anyone has been. So the efforts to distract you from this case and what it's really about, including these clear links in this conspiracy and all the evidence that establishes them, the text, the calls, the records, the testimony of Rivera, testimony of Magbanoff, all those things together. The wiretap, the phone calls, the iCloud messages, in the absence of any other reasonable explanation, should all lead you to one conclusion. This is the puzzle. This is the puzzle. The image is clear. When I confronted Rivera with the defense theory that he and Garcia acted alone to kill Markel and then extorted money out of the dentist through Magbanoff, he found it laughable. I wrote down his quote, that's a good one. It came out in this trial that in Garcia's trial, Rivera was portrayed as the sole killer, the bad guy. He conspired directly with Charlie Adelson, according to Garcia, to commit the murder through WhatsApp or some kind of way. Garcia's lawyers said this was all done without the knowledge and participation of Garcia. Then we learned in Magbanoff's trial, Garcia supposedly conspired directly.
Objection, Your Honor. Approach.
Now, here we are in the trial of Charlie Adelson, and the truth has been revealed. Once again, the state got this almost right. That's what you heard in the opening from Mr. Rashbaum. We understandably thought that his client, Mr. Adelson, was the hirer of this murder, but there's a twist. Nothing is as it appears to be. The defendant is really the second victim in all of this. Per his theory, the killers drove to Miami twice to kill someone they'd never met and had no motive to kill, in hopes that Charlie Adelson would, one, not report them for murder, and two, would instead agree to give them large amounts of cash at that time and on a payment plan over the next, years. Other than failing the smell test, there are a few specific problems with the defense theory. One, how would the killers have known where to go to kill Markel? How would they know who to kill? How How could the killers have known that Dan Martell was scheduled to leave town the day after the murder? 3, possibly the biggest problem, the theory itself makes no sense. Were they just hoping that this would work? We're going to go all the way out there and kill somebody, and maybe they'll give us some money. If they were going to confess to doing the murder to Charlie Adelson in order to try to get money, why not just put a gun to his head and take his money? Why not just rob and or extort him with the threat of death by Latin King? That would save you the trip and the murder rap. Their jigsaw puzzle theory is just a pile of pieces that don't fit together. Each explanation is carefully designed to explain one piece of evidence. But how many different explanations can you string together before it's no longer reasonable? How many coincidences can there be before it's no longer a coincidence? This defendant is not a victim. He's a criminal. He's wealthy, he's smart, and he's successful. But he's a wealthy, smart, successful murderer. My work is almost done here, and yours is just beginning. I trust that each of you will do your best to render a wise and legal verdict in this case. A verdict that speaks the truth. A just verdict. And that is a verdict of guilty as charged. Thank you.
A just verdict, and that is a verdict of guilty as charged. Goddamn right it is. Yeah. But don't worry, Charlie. It's not over yet, man. Dan Rashbaum is going to pull his fingers out of his nose and stand up and talk about a puzzle piece. He can still pull this out of the bag. He's the closer. Charlie. Come on, have faith. Stick with it, Charlie. Don't give up. Send in the closer for the closing argument. This is his best moment. This is all that questioning witnesses, all that shouting at Catherine McBanower. I know you have an agenda, man, but please just answer my question. All that doubting Jeffrey Lacasse. You were afraid of my client? I'm sure you were. Did you call the police? You were afraid of my client? I'm sure you were. Did you call the police? You got back to Tallahassee? Didn't call the police. Man, Daniel Rashbaum, how many times do you think he calls the police just, on a daily basis? He seems to think it falls into every, So you hung out with the criminal element in the Cuban neighborhood and you didn't call the police? He's a crazy guy. But he doesn't give up. You know what is funny about Daniel Rashbaum, and even funnier because Charlie apparently didn't see it and Donna certainly doesn't see it, is that he doesn't give a fuck. He doesn't care. He knows these people are guilty. Right? Absolutely. And he doesn't care. Which is already, to my mind, if an attorney doesn't care, you've lost half of the battle already. It's going to be a goddamn miracle if he does anything at all. The only thing that concerns me a little bit about Donna is because I believe she's purely, heavily going to be laying on the I'm a old, frail, defenseless woman who's probably only got 2 years to live. And it's going to be a sympathy jerker, and they're just hoping that somebody on that jury looks like they've just lost their mother recently. I don't know. Because it doesn't matter if the evidence is faultless. We know about jury jury nullification from the Darrell Brooks case up in Wisconsin, Waukesha. You know, any member of the jury, no matter how good the evidence is, can just decide what they want, basically. And the judge can't say that's wrong and admonish them for it, because that would overrule the entire system of having a jury. The jury has the final say, and each independent member of the jury can say whatever they want. They only need to get one to cause a mistrial. And that might be within reach. Not because Georgia's going to drop the ball, not because the defense has anything to work with in terms of evidence, but the sympathy card, right? One jury member, if they can turn to their way of thinking, like, you know, it might go a bit like this. They might say, well, what's the fucking point? You know, just send her back to Miami. Let her sit down there and play shuffleboard for the next 3 years, and then she'll die. I mean, that, you know. But where's the retribution? Where's the retribution in that? Dan Markel can't play shuffleboard. You know, I bet he'd be great. He'll never move to Florida. I mean, obviously he's already in Florida, but you know, yeah, real shame. So that's what's going to be happening next week. What do you say? Should we shut it down for the night, guys? What time is it? 5:30 a.m. 5:30 a.m. I was looking for the June Umchinder wiretap call with Charlie Adelson, but I can't remember if it's post-bump or pre-bump. It's not long. I was just going to play that as our outro tonight, but I'm not sure where it is. Does anyone remember? Great comments and discussion in the chat tonight, guys. Thank you all for participating, and thank you all to those who supported the channel. And everyone check out the merch store. Share the merch. Fantastic merch. Patreon members, discount, buymeacoffee.com, and super thanks. Okay, yeah. Amy's got the green light here. We'll sign off, but we'll be back tomorrow. Maybe a little earlier. Maybe start around, how's 8:30 sound? Eastern. 8:30 might be good for me. What is that? That's like 1:30 here, or maybe even earlier than that. We'll see. I'll put up a poster tomorrow, or whatever, a notifications on the YouTubes. And yeah, everyone come over to Discord, fantastic Discord, free, no charge. All right. Yeah, rash bam tomorrow, guys. Oh, excuse me. It's late. And we'll see you all tomorrow. Be kind to each other. Don't be an Adelson. Have a safe drive home. We are out of here.